And we're on air. Everybody who is not speaking, mute your mic. We will get this going. A little bit of housekeeping. This is Shit Shooting Sunday, the Memorial Day edition that I planned to do last week. I apologize for not having done it last week, but basically I tried to do it with a new setup so that I could get more people involved, and that new setup did not do well with my internet connection. So I'll be doing this setup until I get into the place that I'm moving to shortly, and then that place will have a better internet connection. But basically, for now, I'll be doing this, and I'll also be doing a morning news show, like to sort of be an antidote to the morning news boring. That because like the morning news is designed to make you happy for your day, and none of my stuff is really designed to make anybody happy. So if you're interested in that, if you're interested in a morning news show that is not like traditional, hit me up, and I'll start sending you links personally. I'm gonna get a group together on Facebook, Twitter, and Discord. Well, I already have that group, but I'm going to be inviting people to it so that I can discuss these sorts of topics that people are interested in discussing that week. It'll be basically like you send me a news link, and I'll consider reviewing that news link from my news show every morning, and I'll take in call-ins once I can get enough revenue to have a stable call-in line. So there'll be that. Also, this presentation is brought to you by fucking Brave browser. If I can get my head on straight. It's 98 degrees. It's almost 100. So my brain is being baked right now. If you want to support me and my suffering, you can download the Brave browser for free. It supports the show for you to have downloaded it, and it's an ad-free and tracker-free browsing experience, so you can support the creators you want manually with their basic attention token system, and you can support me by downloading it, because everybody who downloads it with the referral link in the description assists the show with those basic attention tokens. So feel free to do that. It's also supported by the crypto tab, which is something that is compatible with that, I believe, but it's something that's compatible with all Chrome-based browsers. You can get it and use your spare CPU power to browse to mine cryptocurrency. Also, this show and Moment of Rage are brought to you by Liberty Mugs, the mugs that you can use to piss people off while also consuming fluids. So consider picking one of those up in the description down below, or using any of the other ways to support me by the support link in the very bottom of the description. Anything helps, and I want to make all of my content production as regular as possible. So the more people can assist with that, the better I can do, and the more regularly I can do it. And thanks immensely to everybody who supported me on Patreon here, the Liberty Mugs, the Brave browser, and elsewhere. All of you are making things like this possible, and you're making it possible to make them better than ever as soon as I can get a bunch of shit together. So thank you very much. And I have the topic today slated as the military-industrial complex. We're going to talk shit on the military-industrial complex, and we also have somebody here who says that they support the troops relatively strongly. So it should be an interesting talk. We have some anti-war troops who are considering joining this chat as well. They just have to get some stuff worked out in their schedule. So I'll let you know who those people are when they join. But right now, why doesn't everybody introduce themselves? The order doesn't really matter.
I'll go last.
I'll go first, I guess. This is Finian. You can find me on Steam at Finian. It's Finian, and I'm also at other sites on the web as Liberty Pro PI. That's my business account for being a PI and residential security expert. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Hello.
Hey, so we're doing the introduction round right now. The order doesn't really matter. We got two more people in here. Finian just introduced himself. Try to mute your mic when you're not talking. And yeah, we'll continue with the introduction round as we're speaking here.
I guess I'll go. This is Mance Raider, Freeman. I'm the host of the Freeman Beyond the Wall podcast. I've written 2 books, Freedom Through Memedom, The Kids Are Not All Right. They're available at freemanbeyondthewall.com/store. And on that site, they're only available for cryptocurrency. So I'm doing that. Got a bunch of shows, got a bunch of interviews coming up that are absolutely amazing with some really, truly amazing people. So I'm just happy to be here, and I'm definitely one of those anti-war voluntarists. So I look forward to this evening.
All right, who we got next?
I'll go if you want.
Yeah, sure.
All right. My name's Aaron. You can find me on Twitter at Cape Codpiece. I'm a Fagcast contributor. I'm currently active duty Navy, and you might be wondering why I'm here to talk shit on the military-industrial complex, but it's because I'm in it that I've seen a lot and what goes into it, and it's turned me from being a normie libertarian to a anarcho-capitalist / voluntarist. And I get out in November. That's all I got.
All right. Anybody else?
Well, I've still to go.
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm looping it. I'm an ANCAP in England, which at the moment means I'm a fucking unicorn. I'm family is military. I'm not. However, I've done quite a lot of research on the MIIC. So I'm hoping that I can contribute at least to some aspects of how these fucking things work and why they must be stopped.
I am Idiot's Query. I do a whole bunch of random stuff, talk shit, and I like to discuss things on a very intellectual level. Anywhere from strategy, which is what war is and the industrial complex is, down to what that entails for everyone else and how that can get fucked up. So that's why I'm here today.
And okay, that leaves that gamer bird.
Yeah. Hello. I'm a bird from outer space. Flew into this planet on some fucking I don't even know. It disintegrated in entry. So I hatched here on Earth. I'm just a bird. Don't let the fucking government know I'm here because they'll dissect my ass and kill me. What up? I play video games on YouTube. That's it. There you go. Shit.
All right. Well, I guess the first thing I should ask, and anybody can start, this will be a general free-form question for the next 40 minutes. What is your understanding of the military-industrial complex? Just go as long as you need to really give your thorough explanation of it.
Yeah, I'll let everybody else go because I mean I'll let other people explain because I'm not entirely sure what that means, and I think I need some other people's definitions before I can say anything. All I know is basically having a centralized military is good for the safety of people, but fuck, that's a really vague statement without knowing what exactly you mean by the entire complex.
I doubt it's good for and safe. I doubt the people in Afghanistan would agree.
That's true.
True enough.
I can at least go into the history of it a little bit, because that's, again, one of the things that I did look into. The MIC as a concept has existed at least since the 50s. It's something Dwight Eisenhower, one of our presidents, and I think one of the few presidents in modern history who was also a general, coined as a term. The military-industrial complex is something that we need to be careful of. It was one of his warnings. when he left office. And what it is basically the military combined with the state working together to further the benefits of each other. Now, the only way you can benefit a military company in any real world situation is to generate the necessity for war. And only a state can generate the necessity for war.
Right.
Well, I would actually argue that it's not just the state that can advocate for war. You don't need a state; you just need a cause, really. At the end of the day,
Or a group of people with a similar interest.
It takes a state to fund it.
Well, technically, in the modern day, yes, but I mean, we've been warring. Humans have been warring since time immemorial, since time before we even made military weapons. I mean, if somebody had a resource we wanted, we'd pick up some. If somebody had a resource I wanted, I'd pick up some sticks and I'd go beat his head in, take his resource. Well, if he had some friends that wanted to help defend him, I'd get some of my friends, and it just escalates from there and there until we start sharpening our sticks, and then we start forging our rocks into the bad blades, and then they start like melting the rocks. Like, what the fuck's that all about, man?
Yeah, well, fair enough. But the argument I'd be making is we've kind of evolved from beyond the day when we needed to club a woman over the head to make sure she married us.
Or a man.
Sorry, I'm applying to traditional values at the moment, which is a risk in this bloody country. But hey.
But I disagree in general too, though, because
do you hear the thought police? They're coming.
Oh, they've already come, mate.
A lot of previous violence that was done, a lot of previous violence in the past was done because people didn't have easy means to say things like food that they needed. So the idea, like even today, if a society collapsed, everyone's just going to go back to total chaos and just start killing each other is not true, because most people want to stay alive. So if you think you're going to rob your neighbor for what they have, well, they're probably going to be armed, and good luck doing it without half your party dying. So it's just the risk would not make it worth it.
That's true in America, at least.
Yeah, I guess there's some places on the planet now that, you know, some marauding, I guess, goes on, but even there, they pay a pretty heavy price for it. And like you were saying, the majority of war that goes on today and colonization and empire stuff it's only there because they've got central banks and governments with basically unlimited checkbooks. They can just keep writing and creating more cash.
And what do you have to say about that, Aaron? Because I mean, you're active duty right now. Would you say that these statements are fair?
Yeah. My understanding of the military-industrial complex is started off as pretty anecdotal. It was just me being in charge of ordering parts for my little division on my ship, and the idea was, yeah, it was like 15 people, and we had maintenance and all this stuff to do. So my job was to go in and order as many parts as possible, because if we don't order as many parts as possible and we don't run down the budget, then we don't get as much next year. And
oh yeah, and they mock that on Archer too, but people don't understand that it's more than just a joke about offices.
It's real.
They mocked it on Archer, they mock it on American Dad, they mock it on Family Guy, they mock it on every fucking television show on Earth.
It's exactly
not just
right.
The thing is that the principle of if you don't spend your budget, you don't get more budget is in all businesses on Earth.
But
there is no business that I know of that doesn't have that principle. But only the state is publicly funded.
Yeah. So you have all these contractors that we are only allowed to buy these parts from, and what do you think they do to the prices? And that's the difference between the military industrial complex and that concept of spending a lot so that you have it in your budget next fiscal quarter, and a private company is that they want to spend as little as possible on parts. The military industrial complex, or right down to my division, we don't get to do any type of competitive pricing or anything like that. It's here is the vendor, and this is what you'll be ordering.
Right, because that vendor did enough lobbying, essentially, right? I mean, that's not too far off.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot better, but I would say about maybe every once in a while you'll come across some obscure piece of equipment that only one manufacturer makes, and they stop making it, so it's all in warehouses, and it's at like a 20,000% markup. And that's a conservative estimate.
That's just the transfer of wealth. That's all that's ever been. When they talked about that in the 80s, how the government was paying $1,500 for a hammer. That's just transferring the wealth of the people of a country and the money that they've stolen from them to their friends, to the people who fund them. I mean, there's no if and.
Oh, we lost you, man.
And the fact that that's just people giving money, that's just politicians giving, or whoever it is in the government giving contracts to their friends, and basically saying, okay, well, you have a hammer that I can buy for $3 down the road. I'll give you $1,500 for it, just so that I can transfer the wealth of the people to you. I mean, that's all it is. That's all it's ever been, and that's what it is now. I mean, the stories of in Iraq, they would have a Tahoe, and as soon as if it needed an oil change, they would just blow it up and order another one, or they drive it until the engine blew. I mean, that is exactly what it is. It is that is people transferring money, people transferring our money to their friends. And you vote for these people, and you say, go up there and do this. And that is, if you're not an anarchist, you endorse this. I'm sorry. Change it. Oh, how are you going to change it?
Well, there's no reason to apologize for the truth.
Yeah, I mean, how are you going to change it? You're going to keep voting? Who are you going to vote in? I mean, what is this bullshit? I mean, who wants to argue? Who wants to argue? I mean, who wants to argue that the military is there to protect us right now? 17 years ago, yeah, they were there, right? I mean, you have a fucking Cessna 152 that flies into Washington D.C. airspace in 1995. They're ready to shoot that thing down. But 6 years later, you got fucking planes flying all over the fucking place, and they can't scramble to get there. Fuck that system. I'd rather pay it privately.
Same.
I mean, it's fucking bullshit.
It's just like all of history. Most war is to either steal resources or secure them. Afghanistan for lithium and the poppy fields, and Iraq and Libya and Ukraine for all the gold that got flown out. I'd love to know where that gold went, because of course nobody ever finds out. It's always about things like that. Syria is about the pipeline. It's
Yemen's
not even just
lithium
the contracting companies.
Say again? Right, and Yemen's about lithium too. Yemen is huge lithium deposits. So is Libya to a certain extent. That's the real funny thing about all these environmentalists who are also claiming to be anti-war, saying that, oh, my car reduces military interventionism. Really, where do you think your battery came from, jackass?
Yeah, so it's theft on multiple levels. So the main contracting level, where you got the $800 toilet, all the way up to confiscating their gold, to taking their lithium resources or their gold mines. It's multiple levels, and it's a huge consolidation of wealth to a small oligarchy. And it's all these people that are behind the small companies. They're big companies, but the small group of people running them behind the scenes. And they've been doing it for, gosh, who knows how long, how many generations. I mean, it's basically a pattern they've been following for hundreds of years.
Well, and it's a pattern that works. It has repeatability. Like, that's the thing. These people
up to a point.
Up to a point where the entire where rivers of blood are flowing. But,
yeah, I mean, as soon as you get to the rivers of blood point, though, mate, people start going, "Whoa, that's going a bit too far."
Well, yeah,
nowadays.
but then they well, okay, yeah, sure, but I mean, realistically, that's what this is going to end up in.
It always does.
I've always argued against that, though. Most people don't care unless it's their family being blown to bits or their house being bombed. They don't care. It's somewhere else. It's over there. I don't give a damn. Most people are like that.
To be fair, I don't really care who is getting blown to bits or whose blood is running red in the rivers. I run a very dualitist position on most warfare. Is that on one end, all life is precious and sacred, and all life should be preserved. But on the other hand, on the other hand, we need population control. I mean, we're not in imminent danger of being overpopulated, but we're already at a point where we don't have enough food to sustain everybody.
War ain't the solution to that, mate. The best solution to that is exoplanetary exploration, but that's a much different topic.
Because here's the thing, war almost never hits the shores of the most populated countries. So all these people who say that all we need is a war to control populations, they're not considering bombing China, which is the manufacturing sector of the world. They're not considering bombing, America, which is the, laziness center of the world. They're considering
entertainment.
Yeah, okay, but tomato ketchup. I mean, but like, I can't stand it when that's the argument. When population control comes into play, when war essentially protectionizes people who won't think about the consequences of their fucking. I mean, I always bring it back, like most issues, okay, not always, but most of the time I bring issues back to things like irresponsible fucking. Because if you're going to bring people into the world that you're not prepared to raise, ethically and properly, and if all you're going to do is put them down in front of corporate entertainment and feed them a bunch of useless shit so that their brain gets fried before they're even able to use it, then you're creating the problems and you have no reason to complain, fuck you. Or maybe better yet, don't fuck you, because you're just going to squirt it out anyway.
Here's where I think our heartless libertarian aspect can come out. A lot of the overpopulation argument doesn't take into account all the subsidies that we give to all these sub-Saharan African countries.
Right.
And
yeah.
I know I'm going to sound like a Christopher Cantwell type guy, but like, if we were to stop subsidizing all these poor countries, then their populations would stop exploding.
Well, it's it's partial. Okay, so it's partially because of that, but it's also like these subsidies and all this, aid that's being like distributed to these places. It disempowers their economy and makes them act just like the economies of first world nations without the resources. So it creates a perpetuating cycle.
Jeremiah, that money doesn't make it to the people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, are you kidding? It makes it to the dictator.
Right. But the surplus rice does. The solar fields that were built over the place where somebody was going to build a solar field, the kinds of things where a corporation comes in and says, we'll solve this problem even if the problem didn't exist, like Tom's shoes or something, Well,
do you remember the SpaceX rocket that blew up that had the Facebook satellite on it that was supposed to bring Facebook to sub-Saharan Africa? Why do you think that satellite was on there? And I have a pretty good theory as to why it blew up.
Insurance.
They're trying to bring. What does Facebook do? What is Facebook's product? They were trying to bring capitalism to sub-Saharan Africa, and in my opinion, somebody decided that wasn't a good idea, or we're not ready to do that yet. And I think that's why that rocket blew up.
That seems legit. I just, and like I'm on board with the idea, but I'm not going to necessarily say it, absolutely yet, because I don't specifically know. I will say that it does sound plausible.
Yeah,
I'll make another plausible. I'll add another plausible layer to that, if you don't mind. Insurance claim. You think Facebook would send a satellite up with SpaceX without some company covering their losses if something goes wrong? They'll make they could probably have spent like maybe $100 million building the satellite and then insured it for maybe 150 and made a profit on just letting it explode.
Well, I mean, $50 million profit for Facebook is what they did today. I mean,
still, it's a day's profit.
But that it doesn't make sense considering what the amount of money that Facebook would stand to make by opening up that market to what they do. And I mean, I know pretty much everybody on this call probably knows what Facebook does, but really,
they're a data mining thing for the CIA.
Yeah, they're basically the NSA's data mining network.
Oh well,
by and large, that and Twitter.
They're closer to the CIA though.
But they make a ton of money selling data to private companies and to corporations so that they can market to people. And I mean, and that is
okay. I worked.
If it's free, you're the product.
Okay, I worked in the online advertising industry. Okay, when people say they use Facebook to market to people, there's two types of marketing. Online advertising is insanely complicated. Honestly, it took me 10 years to become like fully compos mentis, and the environment has changed significantly from that beginning. When you say people are selling information, they're selling cookies. That's all they're selling. They're selling basically pieces of information that they have either captured on their back-end servers, which if Facebook are doing is technically against about 50 different countries' laws on data privacy. So they aren't technically legally allowed to do certain things. All they can do is amalgamate signals onto people. Things like whether or not you like Ford as a company, for instance. And when they do that, they'll come up with brand recognition campaigns for people who aren't really aware of Ford instead of the people that they prefer. So they'll target your competitors. It's an insanely complicated market. And the only companies that I have ever seen, or only entities, I should say, that I've ever seen that have tried to use a data set to manipulate people's opinion beyond buy my product is simply the government. When like they try to do a public message to people to try and stop them from doing something, they don't necessarily.
No, you're still trying to buy the product that they're selling. They're selling you the product of state, dude.
Yeah, but the difference is that they're actually trying to change your mind about how reality works. More so. That's all right, man. It's more about with sales. They aren't paying it trying to make you change they may try to make you change your opinion about a company to say that they have changed, but that's what they would do in Facebook. That's branding. It's different from direct sale. Branding is to try and get you to understand what this brand is about, what it's for, or what they are trying to sell you themselves as. Direct marketing or direct response is when they actually try and sell you the physical product. And that has a very different methodology to it, to branding. There are two totally different methods to targeting and two totally different methods to actually understanding your user base. And in the end, the reason why they try to do this is to open up new markets that they aren't aware of, where people might be interested in their product. And that's usually what branding does. And then direct marketing enables that by actually selling it to those markets at an increased rate of return to their original markets, which may have gone lax because they don't like the brand anymore. There's a bit of sort of a tolerance level, like you would get with drugs. You get it with brands and products. You buy enough of them, and then eventually you go off of that manufacturer entirely when one little thing goes wrong.
You mean, drugs as opposed to drugs and drugs?
Yes, yes.
I'm
talking about
dopamine inhibitors and exhibitors. I mean,
yeah.
Really, when it comes down to it, there's very little difference between one shoe and the other. And when people are paying $2,000 for a pair of Jordans that were signed for with a little bit of ink on them versus a pair of Jordans that were not signed and sold for 200, maybe 200 is still probably too much. But when you add a Sharpie thingy to it, which the Sharpie itself was worth less than $1, I mean, it's really it makes it obvious that people aren't in it for the actual shoe. They're in it for what it makes them look like to the community.
Exactly. It's a status symbol.
Yeah.
For people, and we have to accept those are going to exist. They have always existed.
Right.
There's always been some form of status in society, and there should be. I'm sorry, but this is not something that is negative.
But if it shouldn't come from that, and if it does, it's the sign of a fundamentally sick society. I mean, bringing it back to the military-industrial complex, they don't look at things and correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, but they don't look at things in terms of their efficacy. They look at things in terms of what they can get the most bang for their buck out of, in terms of consistently getting funding. They want to get funding. So they order these very expensive things, often with a huge amount of features in it, packed into them, regardless of whether or not those features are actively effective on the battlefield. And as a result, we get a lot of people with a lot of dumb shit in the battlefield that they don't really need, and a lot of those people die. So, I mean, am I off base here, Aaron?
For the most part, you're right, although there has been a shift because there was some public pushback just to how ridiculous some of these contracts are. So now it's become not so much buying expensive things, but making those contracts, you're spending the same amount of money on all these contracts, you're just structuring them differently. Like they'll last longer, or they'll allow for subcontractors and then subcontractors for those contractors. That's what I'm currently seeing in my current duty station right now, at a schoolhouse, and dealing with Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, and all their various subcontractors. They're spending the same amount of money. It's just not for an actual product. Now we're getting on the service side.
Right. Well, and so on that level, then, so they're not doing what was once referred to as gold plating as much anymore, but they might still be trying to look for things that look good over what are good, like that. What was it? The F-17 jet that came out? I forget what the exact number was, but it was that really ineffective jet that got billions of dollars of funding.
Yeah, it's the Joint Strike Fighter program. It's the Littoral Combat
F-35. That's what it was. Yeah, there we go.
And that's part of that Joint Strike Fighter program for all branches of the military, going to have this jet that has these certain features, but none of it works. It's always constantly over budget and constantly behind schedule. And there's nothing in the world. There's no threat in the world that it's a reaction against.
Right. So it's not actually there to protect. It's mostly there to spend.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, now you got people in the top brass that are like, why don't we bring the F-14 Tomcat, which everybody saw in Top Gun in the 80s? I mean, that has better capability than the F-35.
Right. So I mean, that's the point I was making. It's sort of like the signed Jordan. It has the thing people claim to want, but it doesn't actually have anything they need any more than anything that would cost much less.
It's a publicity thing.
Yeah. It's an I've got this thing. It's fake status. It's bullshit. So that's what I was saying, Lupinant.
It's pretty sad, actually, because we've gotten to the point, well, again, I say we, but our military has gotten to the point where it's very similar to the Soviets before they collapsed, and all of our weapon systems are old and antiquated and way out of date. And
are you saying America can collapse?
Yeah, it's bad. Well,
Like
overnight.
I was an Intel analyst, and one of the courses that I took was a top-off course for F-16s. And it was all about the intel on F-16s, their weapon systems and capabilities. And I'll tell you flat out that our jets have been and always have been for a very long time mediocre and secondary to our so-called enemies. Like we don't even have close to the same capabilities. And as you know, the new jet is a joke. It doesn't fly in the rain, and the cannon doesn't work.
Well, listen, when it comes to like military jets, that is one thing. I'll validate that every day of the week for Finian. The MiG was insane. It could do maneuvers that even today most of the fighters can't even do.
Right, and the main thing, the main thing there, specific to the MiG, that it's not classified and is out there in the public, is the fact that if that pilot could see you, the missile would take off the wing, turn around mid-flight, and strike you. All the pilot had to do is be able to see you, and we didn't have that weapon system then. They were like
visual
10 years
targeting,
at least advanced. Yep.
And I swear to God, I mean, one of them got shot. I think did get captured, and we couldn't make head nor tail of it because it was like largely pneumatic, if I remember correctly. That's the thing. It's like one of those technologies that they went full on with an old school tech and advanced it to a point where it was even better than like cutting edge technology in the West. Well, and it cost them so much fucking money, it bankrupted them.
I will say you don't need the best, you don't need the coolest toys to win the war, though.
No, you just need the most.
To win the battle. You need the most. They have to be pretty powerful. I'm not saying they don't have to be powerful.
Well, to be honest,
you gotta have good strategy, and you gotta have the right kind of people wanting to do it. Your toys do matter for sure. Don't get me wrong on that. Like taking a knife to a gunfight, people are gonna laugh at you, but you can still do damage with it if you're lucky, right?
Yeah,
that's where it comes down to, really.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a war to reduce the population, get a draft going where people aren't going to be invested in the war, where people don't like volunteer to sign up and get all gung ho and fucking bullshit, because it's still bullshit. But at least people who join up voluntarily have some sort of stake in it. Like, I'm going to go home, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get me a beautiful college wife. We're going to fuck out like 40 kids and we're going to be the next millionaires, shit like that. The American dream, but if you have a draft, you don't have any of that. You have people actively trying to resist joining up. And then when they do, they resent every bit of it and they don't do as well as the other people. So if you want real population control from a war, that's the only real way to do it. I still think it's a fuck awful way to do it, but that's
and I'd quickly like to raise the question on the population control. I didn't realize you were a eugenicist that game, Abed.
A eugenicist? Is that?
Yes.
Is that? I guess
you're advocating for population control by force. I don't quite know what else to say.
I guess you're right. I'm advocating for the purging of weaker geniuses through war, aren't I? Damn. Survival of the fucking fittest, motherfucker.
Let survival of the fittest work with capitalism. You don't need a fucking war. You just need to get rid of the state and all the feeders.
War doesn't do survival of the fittest. War just means that the people who are laziest and can sit on their asses the best get the most out of it. That's what war means.
No, but listen, you need okay, you know what? No, it's the best combination. All right, you need anarcho-capitalism plus war. Plus, give everyone guns. Everyone kills each other. Only the best survive.
Okay, first off, that's not anarcho-capitalism. That's just like let's play the purge. Let's just play the purge until one man wins.
Well, but you still,
to be honest, is the same thing you get with socialism anyway.
You still gotta purchase your guns, like shit.
Well, this is the point. If everybody is armed, this is the thing that always gets me when people say nobody should be armed. If everybody is armed, imagine the risk of doing anything wrong in society.
Then you've just got to be sneaky about it.
Yeah, but that's the point.
The
only crime that exists then is fraud. If everybody is armed, the only crime that will logically even be possible is fraud, because the minute you try to aggress against somebody, you're going to get shot. And people don't like getting shot, funnily enough. So I've never understood the argument of less, well, I used to, but I really don't get it now. Less guns equals less violence.
I wouldn't say you got it. It
doesn't exist.
I wouldn't say you got it before. I would say you accepted it before and you get it now, so you don't accept it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. I mean, it was one of those things where it's like when I was learning about how a total tangent, FDR as a president. And it was like they were trying to teach me something because I went to private school. The teacher also was adding his own bias into it as well. And his was more capitalist based compared to the school book, which was sort of telling this tale of how FDR was one of our greatest presidents ever. And yet when he was telling it about it, it was like, yeah, but all of his programs failed. And you're like looking at it, you're going, what the fuck? And I benefited from the fact that I lived with my grandparents for quite some time. And they lived through the Great Depression and told me a lot about it and how they fucking hated FDR for basically making it last for so fucking long.
Yeah,
and then dragging them into a war.
Basically his only position that made America prosperous was the war.
Yeah, and to be fair, it wasn't that made it prosperous. What actually made America prosperous was the war. Don't get me wrong. Yes. But it was our lack of involvement in it that actually made us prosperous to begin with.
If America was being bombed too, they wouldn't have made a profit.
Exactly. The only people who make profit from war are the ones who are involved in it tangentially. The people who are actually in the war never profit because logically they can't. They're losing labor force.
Well, but
by default.
That's not necessarily so. What ends up happening, because after a war, you end up with resource procurement because somebody loses. They lose their resources to the winners, and the winners get to take what they fucking want. But
that presumes infrastructure is still there. In ancient times, that wasn't that much of a problem because the infrastructure was farms. Nowadays, it's much more problematic. Because you bomb an oil facility, you need to spend a lot of money to make that oil facility work again. And you need to have a very corrupt government that's friendly to you to make it work in a foreign country. Yeah. Now, they had that for about 20 years, and then those countries started getting a bit uppity. So you guys got to go.
The thing is, in Syria, the new pipeline that they want to build makes it so that they can destroy all the infrastructure they want because they don't care, because part of their current and future objective is to build a new pipeline. So yeah, they can go through and destroy every city they want. They don't give a damn.
Same for Yemen.
No, the thing is, right? It's kind of weird. We, America, did end up profiting from World War II, but not because we were involved. It's because we took so long to get involved. We wait until the end of the war.
Yeah, and through Lend-Lease.
Yeah, so we didn't have to expend so much resources in order to win the war and get take the spoils. And people misinterpret that. They think, oh, America, look at America. They got, after, like, the fucking war broke the Great Depression. Maybe war is just prosperous and profitable. So, like, we've been in fucking war for the last, like, various little wars, many, many, many wars for the last
coup d'etats
40 years now. And look at how bad we're doing. People have
longer than that, mate.
Same difference.
60.
We've been in wars since World War II, and these wars have done nothing but cost and cost and cost and cost. It's time to stop.
Well, let's look at that cost, actually. And you said you needed a centralized system of military defense to make it work. So let's look at the cost. Right now, we're spending, what, $1 trillion a year officially, and unofficially, we've spent between 1995 and what was it, 2008, 21 trillion unbudgeted dollars on military defense, apparently. Now, I argued the concept of defense when Tomahawk missiles are being launched well outside your borders, but it's still $21 trillion. Our entire U.S. national debt has been spent, which technically means our debt is double than what is officially reported.
It's just a clerical error.
Yeah, 21 trillion. That's a fucking error and a half, man.
And you know, you're
not
a clerical
foobar.
And you know, here's the other part of that. You're not considering the money lost in the Pentagon Budget Analyst Office, or the records lost in WTC-7, which was, quote, hit by debris. You know, I mean, there's plenty of reason to believe that 9/11 was allowed to happen for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, document destruction is a very good one for me. But I mean, my own personal thoughts on the matter. I know how inefficient the military is because, and it grinds people down. That's within it in quite a significant way, because you get people who want to be high achievers will be stopped by the higher ups if they don't play the politics. And you're not really, if you're really focused on being a soldier and really are honor bound to defend your country, the politics don't matter. It's your country that you're trying to protect from that perspective, from that mentality. So to me, it's that whole bureaucracy on top that sits there to basically make it even more difficult. You have to play an extra game. It's why I never joined.
Make them and then disenchant them?
No, when you make them, they're practically useless for experience. So I just sent you a bunch of ones I bought off the field store.
So, hold on. Let me
Sorry about that.
The other thing that makes the MIC particularly entrenched in America, at least, I don't know if it's the same in Britain, is our congressional districts house all these defense contractors, which provide tax revenue and jobs and economic incentives. And there is absolutely no way that any congressman that wants to even consider being reelected is ever going to say, you know what, I don't think I want wealth to be transferred to my district anymore.
Yeah, preaching to the choir on that one. It's been a consistent problem. It's a problem with every nation. I shared a link in the Hangouts, so feel free. It's a YouTube video called "Rules for Rulers," and everybody on Earth should watch this damn thing. Yeah, CGP Grey. That thing.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
That video explains how the state physically functions from every possible level. It's not. It's a very basic abstract map of how you would have to be if you are a ruler and what you have to take into consideration, because there are rules. You cannot just be a tyrant that does whatever you want, because you will die. It is guaranteed. If you cannot be in some way beneficent to certain members of your society, you cannot be a ruler. It is not possible for you to rule, because those people will prevent you from ruling. It doesn't matter if it's a democracy, a dictatorship, or anything else in between.
How about a military junta?
Even that.
Okay.
It does not matter, because even when you get a military junta, you need people who are administratively capable. You need people who can run the government. People who are in the former administration will stay in power because they are the most competent person to do the job.
Yeah,
they get entrenched.
It is an entrenchment situation. And the problem is it's cyclical. As Aaron pointed out, if you've got a politician involved in this, he's not going to give up jobs for his constituency because it's going to get him sacked. It's the number one thing that will get him sacked. His job is to make everything as good as possible for the people that voted him into power. So without that, he's fucked. Term limits won't help it either, because you'll get somebody else who'll have to do exactly the same thing. It's because people think in these groups, people think in collective terms. It's we. It's the fallacy of we. It's the idea that there is a we. There isn't. There's a you, there's a me, there's an I. There's nobody else. There's no collective group. There's no entity that is thinking of you and it being a group at the same time. There are individual people who, unless you're schizophrenic and then the walls are thinking about you. But,
yeah.
But and that's perfectly logical for them. I'm sorry, but it is, because that's how their brain is wired. And there's no way they're wired in a way that we can't conceptually understand. And it doesn't mean that their reality is wrong. It just means that it's different from all of our other interpretations of it. It's their reality.
There is such a thing as objective reality.
To a degree, yes, but it's more of a framework. And no one person really has a full view of it.
Well, when I say something like objective reality, I guess I'm talking about common perception, because if everyone in the room, say I picked up a fucking jar of fucking pills here, you can hear these.
Yeah, it sounds like a stapler to me.
Well, okay, but it's pills. You know,
okay, it's a jar of pills. I believe you. It's a jar of pills. But this is my point. Perception is important. Perception matters. Take this is a joke I've read. For the people who died on the Titanic, the sinking was a tragedy. For the lobsters in the hold, it was a miracle. That's the point. You've got perception to deal with, and everybody's perception is different. Nobody's is the same.
Well, yeah, I know. It's just that there are things that are undeniably true and undeniably false. And when everybody in the room sees, an empty room, but another, like when everybody in the room sees an empty hallway in front of them, but that guy in the back sees fucking Jason Voorhees coming down the hallway. You can guarantee that Jason Voorhees probably isn't coming down the hallway, and that guy is just a fucking outlier.
Maybe. Or maybe Jason is really coming after you, mate.
We're gonna get getting into that one movie where the guy puts on the fucking shades and then everything's like fucking alien. It's just, oh, my God.
Well, this is the thing. A lot of the problem with the brain is that if you can convince it that something is true, even if it's false, it'll believe it if it works. And it's why we fell down the rabbit hole with everybody saying that the Earth was the center of the universe for 1,000 years, even though the motion of the planets themselves pretty much proved that it wasn't.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just
that conception that makes it so difficult to agree with the idea that anything centralized works well.
Well,
because it really doesn't.
Because here's the thing, right? Because the guy who discovered that we that we're heliocentric and not what's the other one? Earth-centric, whatever. Just say Earth-centric. We aren't geocentric. Thank you. And we aren't geocentric. He was actually fucking looking, whereas everyone else was already indoctrinated into a hallucination. They had all been told for all of their lives, everything revolves around Earth because we are gods. Blah 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 blah. It's just kind of like, okay, when you've got one person actually looking into the the science of things. He's actually observing the universe. That's a little bit different than the one guy who's hallucinating that giant raving bunnies are tearing everyone's throats out.
Okay, I'll agree. Schizophrenia is a very unique interpretation of the universe that most people do not share and is probably not actually happening.
Well, I mean,
in most
or
cases,
just, we're all in your head.
Exactly.
It's kind of like,
I love that. I love that philosophy as well. The idea that everything is virtual and we only exist in somebody else's perception of reality.
Master race.
And you know what? It's kind of schizophrenia, right? It's kind of like jumping onto a multiplayer server where everyone else is playing vanilla and you've got your own set of mods.
Yeah.
Except
to be fair, it is a little bit.
Except usually it's not a fun experience. It's more of a terrifying experience. So I guess everyone's playing normal Conan Exiles while you're playing the horror edition.
Here's my personal favorite alternative to reality is not schizophrenia, but synesthesia, because it is a fascinating condition. And I can't say that, and it kind of proves that all reality is subjective for us, because we can't. I mean, even with vision, it's subjective. What you see yourself is not what I'm going to see because I'm colorblind, and I can't see certain shades of red or green correctly. They meld into other shades and often come out as mauvey, gray, browns, and all sorts of things that are just wrong.
Okay,
I've had to train my brain to see certain shades of pink.
Right.
So I don't buy them.
Are you good with blue, purple?
Decent. I'm really shit with like vibrant color compared to other people.
Can you please tell everyone that I'm fucking blue and not purple, damn it?
To me, you're indigo.
Yeah, look kind of purple
blue, dude.
You're indigo, mate. You may be trying for royal blue, but it's gone India.
No, it's called Teflon blue. It's a desaturated blue hue that looks purple because it's desaturated, but it's actually blue. I can find it on a fucking hex.
You're indigo, mate. You're indigo.
Blue.
Your jacket looks more blue than.
You're not violet. You're indigo within that rainbow spectrum. You've gone past blue and gone into indigo.
Maybe I'm colorblind, but it looks purple to me.
I'm gonna find the hex color and I'll put it in the fucking chat. But anyway,
my fucking icon is blue. Okay, you're not blue. You're.
Yes, Lupinate. The background of your icon is definitely blue.
But don't quite know how we descended to this.
So,
in my reality, at least.
So to get it slightly back on topic here, how would you say do you think that the intelligence aspect of like, and by you I mean anybody here, that the intelligence aspect of like sort of global policing is part of the profit mechanism for the military, or would you say
1,000 times yes?
Oh yeah, dude. That's part of it for sure. You can't really do anything. You can't continue having your wars and all that good shit without your intelligence agency knowing what's going on and how you're going to do it and what you're going to do when you get there and shit like that.
So you're saying
it goes down to like that even goes down to your special forces and everything like that.
So you're saying it's more like an insurance policy. That's what the intelligence kind of thing is to make sure everything goes smoothly.
Yeah, pretty much like defensive wise and offensive wise. They need to do both things because they're behind the scenes because they have to be, because that's also a way of war itself. If you notice the Cold War is that kind of thing that was going on. So like you're fighting two wars all the time when you're fighting one war these days. Now that's always how it's been anyway. Like back as far as wars has been, you're going to have two kinds of wars going on and two different kinds of games.
I think it's kind of interesting that the war has basically, fucking war has evolved to a point where you basically won't even go to direct war with the country you're at war with anymore. We it's all about information and trying to get a one-up on them. And also, instead of going to war with them, we go and cut off their supplies with other countries and then take their supplies and fuck.
Well, this is the thing. This is why I argue that war is no longer profitable. I mean, historically, yes, when you had people with lots of gold and you could raid them and steal all that gold and maybe get some slaves, it was profitable. But nowadays, it's very hard to actually buy slaves in most countries. Libya, but most countries, it's actually quite difficult. Now, that's mainly because of like the concepts that are behind anarcho-capitalism, the whole abolitionist principles of society. And the main thing about war is people are really starting to get tired of it. We've been at it for a long time. And ever since the Crimea, the idea that war is glorious and it is your duty to fight for your king and country and the rest of it, that's gone really downhill because the realities of war were told back to people. It's horrible. It's painful. It's the worst thing that any man can have to go through. And it scars you for life. And then World War II happened, and World War I even, I should say. And people wrote epic poems about how horrific it was to be in war and how pointless the war was and how nobody knew what the fuck they were doing. And then in World War II, everybody saw how atrocious it was. And it's only recently that we've gotten like embedded reporting and stuff. And the travesties of war have been sort of turned into reality TV. But even that hasn't worked to try and bring back the real muster of the glory days when everybody backed the country going to war. And I really don't see it happening because most people are at least relatively intelligent enough to know that if you kill a lot of people, you ain't going to be able to sell them shit or buy shit from them. So you're going to lose out.
Well,
but you can't.
Not when they're dead. Not when they're dead. You'll be able to buy it from somebody else.
But
way it goes.
You can get better deals with the people you leave alive because they'll be afraid of you killing them if they don't give you good deals.
That didn't work in Iraq. China got all the deals. America got none of them.
I was being partially facetious.
That might have been on purpose, by the way.
That's fair enough.
You'll see our military, our governments, again, I got to stop saying shit like that, but you will see the United States military doing things that directly benefit the people that hold the majority of our debt. And I don't think
of course.
Yeah.
But the majority of our debt isn't held by a foreign country.
Yeah, but we're directly, again, damn it, I got to stop that. The military is directly making decisions and carrying out strategy that benefits places like China. Let's put it that way. We don't know for sure exactly why, but I would guess that it's because, the government owes them a lot of money and they're trying to prop themselves up to stop this thing from collapsing sooner than it's going to.
Probably. No, you can't. Again, rules for rulers. Got to watch it. Again, it'll tell you the reasons why. There'll be people who are involved that have some sort of connection or pull within a local area that China has got heavy investment in. Probably some sort of area that Trump has high support in and would be creating huge amounts of jobs for them. And again, everything boils down to economics. If you can conduct economic warfare with efficiency, you can do far more damage to a country than any amount of glassing could ever do.
And you know why that's why the United States and pretty much any country gets away with trying to say that if you do not pay taxes, you're essentially creating economic warfare against the state, and therefore they can lock you up.
Yeah.
It's an act of terrorism.
Yeah, it's an act of terrorism not to pay your taxes, apparently.
Act of terror. Did they classify it as an act of terrorism?
No, but it could be definitely argued as such.
Well, I guess so, because
under current terror laws, it's almost under current terror laws, mate. You are currently a terrorist because people in this conversation are anti-government, and you are talking to them.
Well, if we're inciting terror, and okay, so yeah, I guess, but I don't know. It seems like it would be hard to make that argument simply because the actual definition of terrorism is in fact causing terror or acting in order to cause terror or incite panic.
The definition of terrorism under U.S. law is the definition of terrorism.
I think to be really clear that it's more like he would be a terrorist suspect. It's less that he's actively engaging in it. But you can be, but you can be like cited as just as bad as a terrorist if you're considered to be inciting it, which means
Dude, I'm just saying, you're on an NSA list. Yeah, you're gonna have to live with that. You're all on a watch list, every single one of you. And I've probably been on one for years, and I really don't care.
And hey, if
you are now.
Yeah,
and hey,
if part of this call, I'll put you on one. Sorry.
If any of you,
I thought you did. I thought you knew that.
Oh my God! Let Jeremiah speak.
If any of you decide that you want to, I have a shirt you can buy that says "Proud to be on a watch list."
Oh, tempting! Very, very tempting. Birthday's coming up, so.
well, since I'm an alien from outer space, I suppose I'll be safe because I can only browse on the deep web. So I'm using Google from the deep web, so I'm safe. Lots of.
You're using Google. That's it, mate. You're using Google.
Like I'm on a computer running. So I can tell you guys my setup right now. I'm on a computer, running a virtual machine,
cool.
running Tor.
Good.
To go to Google through.
Where's your VPN?
My VPN says I'm somewhere near Sacramento, California.
Okay, so you're probably, I can tell by your accent you're American. So first off, you've done one epic fail. You've identified your origin country already as your VPN as well. So you need to change that to somewhere else, somewhere completely independent, like Switzerland, for example. Although that's no longer an option because I just said it.
I change VPNs consistently. We're good. We're good to go. Listen, I've had to do this I've had to do this ever since I started browsing the internet because you don't want the government realizing I'm an alien bird. So I'm fairly adept.
You are not safe. I'm sorry. If you are using anything but Linux, there is no remote chance that you're safe. And if you're using Intel hardware, you're not safe. Honestly, there is no. I am struggling to think of a setup that is immune to the NSA.
Well, even if you're using Linux, you're still totally vulnerable to the ClearNet monitoring.
Yeah, and you're still vulnerable to the hardware breaches that have been coming out as well, because those are firmware shit of the actual chipset. There is no avoiding it. We are all fucked.
Now you guys are damn. I might just have to develop my own. I might have to create my own alien technology fucking computer or something in order to backdoor all this. God damn.
Precisely. This is the reason why the Internet 3.0 is so necessary. The meshnet must live.
Because gaming on an AMD rig, damn dude, that's just no bueno. I have to run an Intel 6700 or else I'm gonna be in the fucking mud, man. But
dude, when the patches come out, those things are going to be as slow as shit, by the way.
But my virtual machine does run Linux and it's running emulated AMD, so
Well, that's at least something, and the fact that you VM is a good sign. So you're at least, but you're still screwed. Oh, I'm sorry, you've been screwed. Everybody, every one of us is screwed.
Yeah, I'm just on like 7 layers of meta, man.
Yeah, I think
I stopped giving a fuck. They'll come after me. They're like, "Hey, he's smart enough. Let's actually get him on our side." And that'll be the fun part.
Yeah.
But they might ask me, or they might kill, or they might kill me because I'm a nobody. You never know what they're gonna do with a nobody. So like, there's multiple options.
There's always a use for people.
Anyway, so yeah, exactly.
That's like, the healthiest thing to do.
But yeah, I just stopped giving a shit.
Idiot's query. That's the healthiest thing you can do.
Anyway. Yeah, I don't do anything extreme anyway. Like, shit, I don't interact with anything for the most part. It's like, so, you know, it's whatever. Like, if they really want to come after me, they can. It's whatever. I know they're going to if they really fucking want to. There's nothing I can really do. I can hide and run, and I can probably get away with it for like 72 hours max. If they really wanted to get me, they're going to get me.
Yeah, see, it's really, I'm slowly starting to realize, damn, I don't have many horses in this race. Basically, my only stance is that is very centrist kind of, well, it's important to have some kind of government to oversee social progress. It's important then to have the government have the responsibility of bearing military protection of us from foreign entities, and that's about it. Because, I mean, if we all just went anarchist all at once, right? We decentralize everything. The problem then would be, well, America still has resources that other countries want, and then how would we stop, say, Russia or Afghanistan or Venezuela?
Okay, so what's we
coming? I love that. Well, Venezuela really needs it. I'd honestly be compelled to just give our shit to Venezuela.
What is we?
The United States of America and citizenry.
Okay, because if we all went anarchist, as in people, then that would solve the problem. And if you're going to make a universalist example that doesn't, hold on, that doesn't involve incrementalism, if you're going to flip a switch, then flip the whole switch. There's no point in doing it otherwise.
Well, yes, what you're saying is true. In order for things like anarchism or communism to work, everyone has to be it. And
just a vast majority.
Yeah, and this is the point. With anarchism, there are multiple routes to actually achieve it. One is, as Jeremiah said, incrementalism, where you devolve power from a central government to more local sources. And
I'm not a fan of the term devolve. If we have to go back on anything, I'm not sure I want to.
I mean, devolve power from top down. Instead of going the other way around. I know, but I'm trying. It's a semantic argument.
I was just jerking your gherkin. Don't worry.
Please don't. I don't swing that way. I don't shag alien life forms, mate.
Well, a hole's a hole, right?
I'm technically
only to Weinstein.
Technically, I was born here on American soil, so technically I'm legal. It's just they don't have any
documentation.
Well, yeah, there's no documentation.
Show me your papers.
They don't have any. Goddamn, what's the word? They don't have any policies for extraterrestrial life form aliens that happen to be born on soil.
Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that?
See,
I'm not sure about that.
I'm not sure about that. They probably have a contingency. If Aaron's still on the call, I'd love to hear. Oh, damn.
No, my grandfather once went to the offices and said, he asked, is there any chance, perchance, that there's any way to legalize a alien life form from another planet? And they said, no. That's the best you can do. It's the best we could do is to go and ask.
But back on the topic, the MIIC, which is the new and evolved form of the MIC, is just strange. It honestly, it's too difficult to describe even. You've got the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, and then you've got a bunch of private companies, I think, tied into it as well, including Google, Facebook, Twitter.
Well, I mean, I would say semi-private because they're not totally private and they're paramilitary used by the public sector with public money. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call those private either. So.
Okay, pseudo-private. People, private in name only. Pinos.
Yeah, there you go.
So, yeah, you've got Pinos. You've got the actual branches of government that run the intel agency. You've got the defense agencies itself and the private sector that it works with. Now, all of these guys are working together in a positive feedback loop, and it is very rare for any of them to rock the boat. It's only very recently started happening at Google with that Maven project getting tanked. And I'm not convinced it's tanked yet. I think they'll probably soft shell it and then put it on the back burner, do it on off the books, not broadcast it to the company, or do it in one of the Alphabet subsidiaries. Because why should Google work on it directly when they can get a branch of DeepMind to do it? And it's that kind of concept where you tie technology so tightly into your physical defense systems that you create weapons of mass destruction that are smart and either inadvertently create Skynet or inadvertently create Hydra. It really doesn't matter which way you go. Either way is going to be shit. And there's not really a happy medium between the two because all of them are going to be used to kill people. All of the weapons will also cost money and basically consume money on a regular basis because of the principle of ammo. So there's no happy ending to this economically, physically, in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to let somebody else speak for a while.
What do you have to say, Vinian?
Oh, I'll go back to what I was saying earlier. The whole system's rigged and everything about it's messed up. And as long as governments exist, basically, there's going to be warfare, and the whole military-industrial complex, as we call it, even the new improved version, it will not cease until we get rid of governments and the systems behind them that allow that to exist. I mean, they're using it. Yeah, they're using it as a huge system to suck money from taxpayers into the profits of the major oligarchs behind all these companies.
And the thing is, the thing probably maybe see what I think it's more productive to try and find a form of governance and government that works and does its job correctly and doesn't fuck over its citizens, because it doesn't matter if we go back to anarchism. If we flip the switch or we make a gradual change, whichever happens, it doesn't matter that we finally find a place where we have a fucking utopia. Let's assume we find the fucking anarchist utopia, right?
No. I've got to stop you there. There is no anarchist utopia. That only exists for communists.
Okay.
Yeah, anarchy and utopia are not synonymous. You can never have an anarchic utopia.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah. It's like saying chaos with perfect order. It's just no.
Okay, well,
how about chaos control?
The thing is, like if you manage to get almost everyone or the grand majority of people to agree with anarchism, there's always going to be a group of people who don't agree. And if those people don't agree with anarchism and they hold that in common, they could just the problem is that they may slowly start killing off anarchists. And
they can try.
Because they can try.
You have the right to defend yourself and everything else like that.
I get that, but because anarchism is decentralized, you're not going to be you're not necessarily going to all know when somebody is getting attacked,
So,
or when,
yeah, how?
or
why not? Why not? Why? Hang on a second. Think about what you're saying.
yes,
Twitter right now basically has almost irrefutably damaged the companies, companies like United Airlines and other groups, or they would have without the state. Let me rephrase that. Because they allowed a state official to basically abuse and eject a paying customer because of very spurious reasons. And that only happened because we have this technology today. Why on earth would that technology suddenly disappear in an anarchic society?
Yeah,
and why on earth would no one know that this happens?
There's two results from anarchism or anarcho-capitalism, depending on your personal preference. But remember, one of us here is an ANCAP, right?
At least one. Me, for one. Jeremiah, I think, would qualify. Finian.
All right. All right. Here. Let me be clear. I like capitalism, but I'm open to anything that doesn't have the state, because I'm not willing to aggress against people to get my system, unlike the statists do.
Yeah, Jeremiah is a proper voluntarist. I'm an anarcho-capitalist, but it equates to the same thing in the end.
Okay, so let's I'm going to address the two different results of anarchy or anarcho-capitalism, right? So say you've just got normal anarchy and you have capitalism as a lowercase on the end. That just means that you've got communities of anarchists who use capitalism as a way to trade their goods and services amongst each other. But the thing is, once you've done, yes, you may have technology still, but who's to say that things like Twitter won't go down without because we do have we have companies and the like that are subsidized by the government that that protect the internet, that keep it working, and that maintain the lines. So if the government goes down, it's safe to say, it's safe to say that the companies may not have the capital to work anymore. Plus, they may not be able to survive in a post-capital or a post-statist state where there isn't a capital and a common a common way to trade goods. This is very much, it's kind of like what happens within the Fallout universe. Yeah, you've got the problem of first the fucking bombs fell, but aside from that, they didn't have, for the first 100 years in Fallout lore, they didn't have a common capital. So companies had a hard time working with each other. It wasn't until I think it was in Fallout 2 or Fallout 1 that a company on the West Coast, or not a company, but a conglomerate of traders on the West Coast decided to start using bottle caps as a means of currency because the bottle caps are meant to symbolize a stock of purified water.
Okay.
So
first off, mate, that's where the problem exists in the main. We don't live in the Fallout universe.
Well, yes, I know.
We live in our universe. And I do get the parallel. I do understand the parallel. And yes, that may wind up being what happens if some governments or the Georgia Guidestones people decide that glassing the earth is the only solution.
Right. Well,
I really don't see the economic benefit of that.
That's not even where I was going. So I don't think, we're not going to go to a post-apocalypse necessarily.
Yeah. Let's go with we've got modern society, and we're devolving the state.
So what I'm saying is, though, that without the government holding up a lot of the services that the government does, those services may go down, and then it falls upon people themselves to maintain some of these things. Well, not everybody's a nuclear physicist who can work the nuclear plant down the fucking road. Not everybody knows how to do electrical work, so you may end up losing a lot of power lines. You'll end up losing some roads. You'll end up losing a lot of communication networks.
Why wouldn't the people who work there stop working there just because it's gone?
Why would, yeah, that's exactly right. Why would, just because the state, the entity that currently employs these people,
too, just keep on working there.
I'm
yeah,
not
why
saying
would
it
that?
would, I'm not saying it would universally go down, because you might have some places where things still end up working right, but there are places where these entities, where these companies wouldn't be able to reach anymore or whatnot, because so you'd end up getting large pockets of America that are no longer technologically savvy, because we don't.
Why would you assume that people who are working there are doing those things now, currently, wouldn't be doing those things continuously? If people are still doing it right now, they can. Okay, so if someone has or someone's working for a business, say they're working for a trucking company, right?
Right. And
there's only this town that's say it's up in the mountains. The only way to get there is by 2 passes. Okay, east, southwest, whichever direction. Let's just plop this town there. Okay, and I know there's a couple towns like that. I went to university in one. And so there are towns like that here in America for sure. And so when you have that, you can look at all these truck drivers driving things and dropping things off. And why would they stop going up there? They can privatize that. They can be like, oh, this collapsed. I can go get this and do this. Because then I can get people up here to work with me down here. And they're going to keep on doing it. It's beneficial to them to keep it up and to keep that trade up.
But how is it always beneficial? Because that's you can't guarantee it's going to be beneficial to go to continue doing all of the work that they're doing.
If it provides them with a profit, it's beneficial.
What's the profit?
The profit is the money that you make.
Some people will
from
drop
them.
out for sure. Some people will drop out because they don't think that they're going to be paid for what they're doing. Some will say, "Oh, this is an opportunity for me to make this mine," and they will continue to do it. It'll therefore make their profit a lot higher, and they can work a lot better and get the things there. So therefore, they will always have a trade route to give to. And that will keep it going, because it's here. Just because it's here now and it's government subsidized or and everything like that does not mean it will necessarily disappear. There will be some people who will leave. However, it does not mean everyone will leave. And there will also you're also not taking into account the fact that people will also want that. So either they're not going to be getting it, so they're going to go out and get it themselves if it's not delivered. And then they'll set up trade routes and everything else like that.
Are you done?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, it's your turn now. Sorry.
You keep making these little pauses, and it makes it. Anyway, the thing is, government goes down, the dollar is worthless.
Yeah, but Bitcoin ain't.
So what are they getting paid? Bitcoin is that Bitcoin might not be worthless, or
Ethereum, or any of the other cryptocurrencies out there. As soon as cryptocurrency came out, I was a firm believer in anarcho-capitalism because it killed my one argument.
And
it killed it.
Bitcurrencies are fucking dying right now.
No, they aren't. They're just going through a correction. They're going through a correction. That's fine. They need to, because they're currencies and they're being traded like commodities. It doesn't work that way. You can't whenever a currency is traded like a commodity, it fails massively. That's what happened to Iceland. That's what happened to that was what happened to Germany before World War II. I mean, honestly, there are so many reasons why you cannot trade currency as a commodity, because it is a currency. It's something that you use as a tool for trade. It is not an investment engine. And people are starting to realize that.
Okay, yes. And now we have the other issue. The other issue is now you've got like 40,000 different cryptocurrencies. You may not be getting paid when you go to do business with this fucking mountain town out in buttfuck nowhere. They may not be paying you in a cryptocurrency or a currency that you can accept, because other places that you do business don't take that currency.
Everybody likes gold and silver.
Dude, that problem can be solved, and I'm not sponsored by these people, but I do not mind the concept of being sponsored by them. That problem can be solved by downloading the Koinomi wallet, which supports many different cryptocurrencies. I think they have like 150 plus. So, I mean, it's very difficult to find a cryptocurrency that isn't supported by some app you could very easily download. That's one of the points of being decentralized.
Yeah, and the other thing is with that decentralized network, you can then have multiple apps that provide that service. So you can pick and choose which provider you want to use. That's the beauty of the system, is you have choice.
Well, that'll inevitably lead to one company dominating, and then
no. That's Pareto effect. It doesn't work. There's no guaranteed monopoly unless you have a state.
Also, let me be specific. If you have like countless competing cryptocurrencies, and those cryptocurrencies are what society runs on, enough for one company to dominate, then let's be very fucking clear and say essentially that sort of society would have enough people who were opposed to centralization that once one company started dominating, they might have other things that they use.
Well, crypto is a perfect example because cryptos have to have a valid and profitable and, you know, a reason to use it basically behind them. And the cryptocurrencies that don't have any of that don't do well, and they eventually go back to zero. But there's plenty of cryptocurrencies that actually have a worthwhile either service or product behind them. And those ones do well, and it's a better bet basically than others. But yeah, certainly you should not do all crypto. You should do bartering, you know, supplies and goods, and also gold and silver and property and other primary
diversify
wealth.
your portfolio.
Exactly.
Right, yeah, no one's saying that just do crypto only, but
no.
We're looking at a very near future where the fiat banking system as we know it now is going to collapse. This is like 2008 over again on steroids. And when that happens, all of this wealth is going to look for places to flee into. And one of them will be crypto, one of them will be land, and one of them will be precious metals. They're going to try to invest. Yeah.
I've tried to invest in 2 out of the 3, and they're the physical ones, not the more ephemeral ones, to be honest. But that's mainly because I sold out of Bitcoin when the first major crash happened and cashed in big. But that was a long time ago. And if I'd have held on to it, I'd have been probably getting some rather nasty emails from the IRS.
Yeah, my wife kicks me all the time because I bought ETH when it was $8 to $10 each, and if I had held on to it and sold it at its top, it would have been 1.2 million.
Oh, Jesus!
And I didn't do that, of course. I sold at $90 each. So I didn't make nearly as much as I could have. But yeah, she hates me for that. But it's hindsight. Like, how would I know? You know, I was securing my profits.
I bought Bitcoin.
I've learned the lesson. I buy and hold.
Yeah, I bought Bitcoin when I had a $100, I think it was $150 cap or something at the time, and I held until it went to $1,000, and now I've been kicking myself ever since.
Yeah, my son goes to community college with a kid he's probably 22 now, and he was one of the initial investors when it was like $1. And the kid's, yeah, he's of course independently wealthy, and he just does no job at all.
Retired at 30.
Yeah, he's retired at 22. He can do whatever the fuck he wants.
He's living the dream.
Okay,
yeah, for him, even with the price dropping to 7,000 each, he's still filthy rich. Yep. And I admit, when you withdraw that money, that's somebody else's money. So technically, it is gambling. You're taking someone else's money off the table when you cash it out.
Yep,
I do agree with that.
Yep.
Okay,
it is.
So I basically, I get badly, but I basically covered the idea that. Or the idea of a collapse because fucking currency means nothing now. If when anarchy wins, you guys didn't take that, but there's always the other option. Nothing collapses. The infrastructure for internet survives. So anarcho capitalism. Do you want a cyberpunk dystopia? Because this is how you get cyberpunk dystopia.
What you're saying? We're gonna go Blade Runner?
Maybe. or one of the other cyberpunk dystopias that exist?
You see, I don't see that, because the whole point of a cyberpunk dystopia is one monopoly rules them all. Well, it works in Umbrella Corps, it works in like all these other ones, but those have states.
If one company does well enough and gets currency, they will end up with enough currency to see. This is the one reason or the only situation in which I approve of a government intervening within economics, is to prevent monopolies from forming due to one company's outrageous success.
Okay.
So what ends up happening?
I can argue against that one.
I've got a great idea. Let's get monopoly. Okay, let me just say this. Let's get monopolies to stop by hiring a monopoly. That's a great idea.
Yeah, that is your argument, mate. You are basically saying a state is a monopoly on force. That is the definition of a state.
I don't care about a monopoly on force. That's not. Fuck you. Okay.
They have a monopoly on the legal system too, though. So how do you expect to compete against them?
Fuck you. Listen. Right? Monopoly on state. You know what? I'm a monopoly on judiciary. Well, you know what? I'm good with that, because I don't really want the fucking. I don't want Sharia courts moving in and being all like, "Hey, we want to be a judiciary system in here too." No, fuck you. Get out.
Then don't subscribe to that cult. The whole point of a voluntary system is you agree to it, not somebody forces you to.
Not everybody is going to agree to the voluntary system. Some people are going to come in. You're very okay.
Why? Why?
You brought up
explain why.
You brought up a monopoly in force, right?
Yes, that's what a state is.
If you demonopolize force, that means anybody is free to use force. So the Muslims are free to force their way in and start enforcing Sharia law.
And we're free to defend ourselves.
Yeah, well,
that's the point. But and we've got fucking nukes.
But you're decentralized. You don't when you decentralize.
We do. What? They're going to vanish? Where all of those weapons are suddenly going to disappear from the face of the planet. Please explain how that happens, mate.
They don't belong to us anymore. They belong to whoever has jurisdiction of the area those nukes are in.
Well, that was basically a non-existent entity. Therefore, it's going to become a voluntary entity that controls those nukes. Somebody has to maintain that shit, mate. And people who care about it will.
It's worse than that too, because current government systems, they have a vested interest in government systems like Sharia law coming into effect. That's one of the reasons why you see the so-called immigration policies that they have, because they want that type of full control. So the government's actually against you in that regard. They're not helping you.
Well, look at my country, for example, where I'm living right now, mate. I'm in the UK.
Yeah,
so
I know,
and man. you just have to look at the fucking news over here.
I know about how
this is what the state wants. This isn't something that is going to, and not just in the UK. This is coming to your shores. I'm sorry, you guys are going to have to prep for this. And you're going to have to fight it. And it's not just through the Democratic Party, it's through the state. Not just the Democratic Party, because it works for them. They all want to control.
It doesn't work for the Conservative Party, the Republicans. They don't want it.
Yeah, they do. They just want it in certain sectors. They just don't want it in all sectors right now. But just wait till they get full power. If they get full power and actually full control of media and everything else, they will basically get to make those moralistic judgments on society again. And we'll be back into the 1950s.
Yeah, they want a theocracy. They just want a different one. I would make one argument against what I think is coming too. I agree that I think it is coming, but as long as people in the United States are armed well, I don't think it'll work as well here. Because if people are trying to break into my vehicle and there's, the Rodney King or the LA riot type of riot on a corner and they're trying to kill me and my family, I'm going to pull out a fully automatic weapon and shoot them all. It doesn't, unless they disarm me, it's not going to work.
What if there's 12 of them and they all have fully automatic weapons as well?
Get behind cover.
Yeah, I would rather die in a gunfight than die a slave or see a massacre. By all means, yeah. I don't welcome it, but I'm gonna be your huckleberry, and I will fight my way to death.
You'll either be a slave or you'll be somebody who is willing to stand by his principles and die by them.
But I don't have to be a slave just to be in.
You are a slave. We're all slaves. This is the point. We are. We're being stolen from every single day. You really need to watch Walk and Rose, mate. You really do.
It's not stealing if you're doing it voluntarily. You may not.
You are. Oh, you're voluntarily giving the government your money to fund war. Then, yeah. You're voluntarily funding that. You're happy to bomb Syria.
I would voluntarily give my money in order to fund the systems that protect me.
But that's not what they're doing. They're you're funding. You are literally funding. Police officers.
My money may go. My money may in part go to. Fuck. Sorry.
That was actually quite eloquent from what you were about to describe.
Fucking birds don't burp, so it freaks me out every time that happens. Anyway,
you should have just blown up. You should have blown up just now. What the hell?
But anyway, no, I would yes. So part of my money does indeed go to bombing Syria. I don't approve.
Are you happy with that? Well, then how can you say that is okay?
I can voice my problem with that while also being okay with the fact that my money goes into the police system, which yes, there are bad actors within the police system, but the police system.
Do you want to know why?
Because I know that there's a proclivity within the kind of people who apply to those kinds of jobs to be power abusers. Yes, there are good actors and there are bad actors.
There are no good cops.
That is.
I'm sorry.
That's wrong. Privatized police. There are good cops. Privatized police. There.
I'm sorry. Sorry. Private cops are the only ones who are good. Because they're rights enforcement officers.
Only privatized, huh? Only privatized.
Yes, because there's a contract. Because you have voluntarily agreed to it, and because it is ethical under every conception of ethics.
Yes.
And they're equal under the law, I'll make sure they're not protected by double standards.
I'll make sure to tell every cop who's saved a life, who's gone out of their way to save a child or prevent a robbery or prevent somebody from killing another person, that they're a bad cop merely because they exist.
Do they enforce unjust laws?
No. They're not bad merely because they exist. They're bad because of what he just said. Don't detract from his argument with that straw man bullshit.
Thank you, Jeremiah. I am elaborating on the fact that there are good cops. Because there
are cops who are good people, but they are doing a job which is inherently unethical. That's the point. True. Yes, it is. There are unjust laws. They have to enforce them. That is unethical.
They're no longer a good cop. Correct.
Exactly. Now, if they choose not to, they're not.
There's no such thing. There's no such thing as a good cop. As soon as you are sworn in as a cop, and you go from that step to enforcing a law that's unethical, you're no longer a good cop. It's impossible. We used to talk to a guy on Google Plus that was called like the libertarian cop or something. Okay, he was totally inconsistent. There's no way.
Hold on, Gamer Bird. You let him finish.
It's just not possible. You cannot be in that position afforded your double standards and special protections. Again, I was sworn in as a reserve deputy for my county. I thought my sheriff was a good guy. At the time, I thought it was a good idea to do what I was doing. The whole system, you have a free county commonwealth attorney on your side. All the judges are on your side. The law is on your side. You are protected by a huge double standard, and you have all kinds of special protections and special rights under the law. Just by default, even without doing anything, all of those things make it unethical. You can't be unequal under the law. Everyone is supposed to be equal, or we're not free, period.
Put it another way. Every single court case where you have X person versus the state, the person who is the accuser, the judge, and the people employing them are all the same entity. It is in no way is it just.
Okay.
No,
so
yeah, the government should have checks and balances. That's the whole reason why the government was formed, or at least it was trying to have the most checks and balances possible. Anyway,
so
continue your point, dude.
you mentioned Finn. You mentioned just then everyone is equal under the law, but nobody is free, right?
Unless you're equal under the law, no one's free. Right now, the legal system protects agents of the state in an unequal way. They have special rights. For example, in my county, a cop can have a gun on him off duty and have a drink for dinner. I can't. That's a very basic example, but stuff like that makes us unequal under the law, and it's tyrannical. It shouldn't exist. What a cop can do, I should be able to do.
Okay, that I can agree with, and that's something that I would take issue with, because that's not.
It's almost like if you're saying that you oppose the monopoly on force.
Well, no, that's almost as if every different state and every different county within the state operates differently from each other, and I don't know the state or the county within that Finian operates within. I only know what's local to me, or what I have heard from people around me, or I have heard from people in the next county over, or fucking 2 states down the road. That it's almost as if, yes, we have a unilateral, centralized federal government, but for some reason, the state rights tend to take priority, and they all operate differently. So what ends up happening is you've got places within the country that are more corrupt or less corrupt, or more ethical or less ethical, because we don't have a completely centralized system. Now, if
you've got are regional monopolies, mate. That's all.
If you want to talk
even at the city level, that monopoly level at a city level is still tyrannical.
But
you can't create it small enough, other than getting it all the way down to the individual and making me, as a person without a badge, a police badge, sworn in duty officer that has all those special protections and double rights that are granted to them. You can't. There's no way to make it equal unless me and that person that has a badge are equal under the law, and it's impossible. It doesn't matter what county you're in or what city you're living in.
Yeah, okay, but how can you be sure that a PSC or a PMC won't be just as bad?
What's a PSC?
A private security company.
Well, okay, so private security companies. Let me put it to you this way: a
privatized security company is in essence a public police force. So instead of being funded by the government, it's owned by a private industry. It's the same thing. It's a security.
But you'd have multiple, and their employment contracts would be focused on rights enforcement, not on necessarily a law. You would enforce property rights, and you would enforce basically prevention of trespass, prevention of violation of property, things like that.
It protects property. It would protect property, and they would defend you. That's ultimately it. They would defend you and your property. That's the ultimate purpose of the
There's no value to anything else, because then you're going to be committed to combat with other security forces all the time.
Okay, but if somebody actually so the private security company will protect you, right? That's
yes,
fine. That's great. What happens after you fucking die? Say somebody murders you. That private company is no longer they no longer have a contract with you.
Yeah, they no longer have you as a profit source. So they are losing money, and they're going to respond to that quite violently, probably, because if they can prove who it was.
Well, that's not necessarily true, because very much a security company may have, depending on the company, and depending on you, and depending on the atmosphere, because it may be that all companies have something like this in the future. If you're contracting with a private security company, there may very well be a clause that after your death, they have a contract to liquidize part of your assets, and your contract is done because they no longer have a profit from you.
Nobody.
Here's also
they have to say somebody won't. Yes, but this is the point. If you have competition, you have that kind of clause in your contract. You have to be certain everybody else does too.
let me. There's also the point where it's not only one person. Usually, it's not going to be ever just one person unless that one person can afford to private police themselves anyway. So usually, you're going to have a couple people throwing in some bucks and being like, "Hey, let's sign this contract together." Boom, you got business partners. And necessarily, one person's death does not necessarily mean the contract's over. Now you have to kill all of them at the same time in order for the contract to be over. In order for that to happen, you got to get past the police. Now, if you're smart enough and you bought the right kind of police and the right kind of training, you know their efficacy, you can definitely get away with not having everyone get killed. See, there's a different kind of thing right there, and you can't always like. It's definitely like one person. This can happen. Your scenario can't happen for sure, but when that person does die and the contract is done, the police don't have to. The people you hired do not have to go and avenge you. That's not their job. Now, if they fail defending you, and if they fail defending you, then that goes against their PR. It's not good for their business. So it's in their best interest to make damn sure that you stay alive and that your property is protected. But if it doesn't happen, you know, shit sucks for sure. But that goes against their efficacy as a business. They're not going to get hired as much. Yeah, so like they know the risk. That's a risk, and that's part of business.
I get it, but I'm saying that what I'm saying and what I'm not comfortable with is that if we had to, first off, not everyone's going to be able to afford a private security company. So that's immediately a deficit to the.
Yeah, that's true. They can afford a knife, though. They could afford a gun.
Yeah, that's not true, though. Hold on, that's not true, though. That's not true, because even in my community, I live in a small community, and the HOA hires off-duty police officers to come here and do patrolling outside of their normal job. So
everyone can chip in.
It's part of your homeowner's fees.
Yeah, even if you're
in a lot of places.
Even if you're in a,
you can all come to the collective agreement and hire.
Yeah, you would hire a security company to secure your community. And your HOA might be paying it with HOA fees, but even the poorest community, even Detroit's a good example of this. There's private security forces that operate in and around Detroit, and they do an excellent job. And again, they're equal under the law, and they're not protected by special rights and double standards. And they do actually protect people, and they're hired to do it. And it's a poor community, so yeah, yes, obviously the rich guy is going to have better security, but poor communities and people that are pooling their money together would have decent security. Obviously, they're not going to have the best, but certainly they're going to have better security than a state-run monopoly system where the cops don't give a fuck about you or your family. Their number one goal is to go home safe at night. They don't care about you.
And fill quotas.
Yeah, and to raise revenue, exactly, to pay. Yeah, and to pay for all the stuff.
And you know, and it's really it's unfortunate because I can see the flaws in both systems. You know, I understand the flaws of our current system because it is fucking fucked up. Yeah, I know they don't really care about any of us. A lot of them don't. There are many cops that are in the job just to make the world a better place. That's that's what they want to do. That's why they went to be a cop.
Yeah, of course.
And I agree
you're
with
gonna have
that.
those people in privatized police, and you're gonna have those people like everywhere. It's never gonna go away.
Well,
I get your fear too with it. Like your fear is that
hold on. You're not necessarily only going to get people who just want to make the world a better place. There's a bunch.
No, definitely not.
Just get into. I mean, there's a bunch of people who will just get into privatized policing. Purely for the profit, or maybe again, they want a power trip, and it's going to happen no matter what the company is.
The problem is within an anarchic system, the way to make profit is to make people's lives better, because there's no safety net. There is no. You are fully responsible for everything you fucking do and say.
Exactly.
In an anarchic system, nothing can stop you. And nothing can protect you from the consequences. Because to have freedom, you have to take the consequences of your actions. If you can't take consequences of your actions, and if you can't make the choices, you're a slave. We all are at the moment, unfortunately. I really wish we weren't.
Well,
but we are.
The thing is, though, we're not necessarily in a monopoly of force either. Because
why? How can you say that?
The state police aren't, or the federal police aren't the only police. First, I mean, You've also
you've got 3 layers of regional monopoly that are all interconnected to each other and bound by the same processes.
Yes, hold on. Let me. I mean, I was going to point out. Yes, you've got the federal police. Then you've got you've got federal police officers like highway patrol and whatnot. Then you've got
FBI, CIA, NSA.
Those are on the federal level. Then you've got
highway patrol is state.
Then you've got local police precincts, and then even lower than that, you've got the sheriff. The sheriff is different from a police agency because they're trained differently. They have different responsibilities. So you've got the different levels of that. But at the same time, you've also still got privatized security companies who are they are registered to enforce the private. Basically exactly what a privatized police force would be, but they usually take, you can probably have them police a neighborhood, but they're usually...
There's been cases of that.
They're usually contracted to defend a company because that's who has the money to enforce them. So we do have privatized police stations that do, or privatized police forces and security services that compete with the state, but the state is basically
they don't compete with the state. They don't compete with the state. They provide a service in addition to the state that certain entities can afford, or entire communities can afford if they pool enough resources together under a homeowners agency agreement. That's usually how these things are funded right now. And there's one exception, which is a very nice little concept over here called Find My Body. It's an app. You basically pay 200 quid a month and you get your own privatized cover. It's a bit pricey when you actually consider it, because that's £400 a month, basically, or $400 a month, roughly, at its peak. And the pound and the dollar are fluctuating so much so now it's a bit difficult to keep on top of it. But let's say it's about $300 a month to have your own, basically, cop. Well, it's too much perhaps for you. It's not that expensive, really, when you consider it. Really. When you actually consider what you're getting, it's a £10 a day charge. It's really not that much. It's $10 a day, mate.
Smokes a day.
Yeah. If Jesus, is that how much they cost over there? Jesus.
You're in Cali, yeah, dude.
Oh God. Oh, you poor man.
Still though, I mean, they don't necessarily compete with the government, but they
do.
They do. They don't, but they do because.
But the problem is the social. Okay, the problem is do you think socialism works?
I think aspects of socialism can be properly retrofitted to other ideologies, but socialism does not fucking work.
Okay, socialism at its core is the concept that the group should own something. Okay, that the public should own something.
Yep.
Correct? Would you agree with that statement?
The collective.
The collective owns.
If you're asking me what I think about if you're asking me about the definition of socialism, then yes.
Okay.
If you're asking if I agree with that concept as a notion, no, not really.
Okay, good. That was going to be my next question, effectively. Now,
because that takes away private property rights, and I'm all for the right to own private property.
Good. Now, if you are, and you're logically consistent on that, you cannot accept any publicly funded system as being either good or viable.
That's
because
not true.
They are socialism. They are socialism.
That's not true, because I just said I just said
what you're just describing socialism being the dominant player within a capitalist market. That's all you're describing. It's still socialism, and it's warping the market. That's why it doesn't work.
I think that it's important that government responsibilities are inherently socialist, but I think that the economy and capitalism should be left largely untouched by government. Government should be socialist. The people inside the government do not necessarily have to be. The responsibilities of the government are inherently socialist. The responsibilities of the individual are not.
Well, this is the problem. Conceptually, in order to give government more power and therefore the individual to be more powerful, to have more control and more ability within his own life, which he should not have, in my opinion. No man should have power over another man that is not voluntarily given unto him. That's the only thing that you should give.
Let me put it this way, right? I think that you should be... I think that legal citizenship should be its own thing, right? You should be able to be a citizen in the United States whether or not you pay into the system. However, there should be a process for legalization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to get into the importance of a nation and the importance of
if you need it for your identity, so be it.
Right. I think it's important to have nations, and I think that anarchism inherently destroys nations. But let me.
I don't see that as a bad thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
that's a good thing. You know what my nation is? My nation is liberty.
Yeah. I disagree because I disagree again because not everyone's going to adopt that ideology, and then Russia could just kind of rush in and say, "Hey, we want all of your shit." So
yeah, and we could say we've still got nukes, mate. They may be controlled by 1960s technology, but we still have nukes.
Well, no, you don't. But somebody.
Well,
does.
no, this is the point. If Russia were to attack, everybody would pay the company that has nukes to retaliate. That's the point. Unless Russia took out all of the companies that had the nukes.
In any case, I want to seek a middle ground between your fucking anarchism and the system.
Middle ground fallacy.
No, not a fallacy.
Yes, it's a middle ground fallacy. That is actually seeking the middle ground, saying that'll work is a fallacy. That's the problem. That is a logical fallacy. It's informal, but it's logical.
That's great, but that's fine. That's great. I think that it should be possible for a person to not pay taxes, and as a result, they're not protected by the police force. They're not protected by basically you can opt out.
You're for a donation state.
I'm for
no individual is protected by the police state as it is now anyway.
That's not entirely true.
So
well, there are a few. There are a few politicians, mate.
So what you want then, if I'm not being too brazen with this, blanket statement here, what you want then is a system where people aren't accountable to the people who are involved in the system. Because if people aren't paying into the system for the protection of public officials, then they won't have any ability to sway what those public officials do to them, which means effectively by not just simply having a clientele structure, which for some reason you have an anaphylactic shock when you think about that. Instead of having a clientele system, you want still public officials, but somehow not a universal taxation system, which seems hugely unaccountable to me.
So basically, I want us to have an official government, but I want you to be able to opt out of it. It'd be pretty neat.
You want a voluntary government.
So you want people to be able to pay
voluntarily collectivized government.
Hold on. So you want people to be able to pay to force people to do something that they do not have the right to do on their own. You still want you still want special government privileges in the hands of these people. You just don't want the people that don't like those special government privileges to have to pay for it.
And then by not paying, they opt out of all of the things that the government does for them or to them.
No, they can't. No, that doesn't work. What? They can't.
It doesn't quite work that way. It really doesn't, unfortunately.
They can't do anything to the people who don't pay them. Then how do they enforce with those people? Those people just get to get away with whatever they want because the public funded mechanism. Isn't something that they funded? How does it work?
No. If you aren't buying into the system and you go and fucking murder somebody, the government, if it depends. First off, if they're being protected by the government because this person you murdered is being has been paying into the government, then the government judicial system can prosecute and litigate against.
So the government is still going to do things to people. Why is murder the only thing you're looking at?
Okay. Hang on a second. I'll adjudicate quickly. Effectively,
hold on.
You're saying
before you adjudicate, let me clarify. By the way, I'm fucking autistic, and sometimes wording gets away from me, and I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to.
It happens. Everybody loses the words. Everybody loses the words, mate. It happens. There's a very what you are actually proposing is anarcho-capitalism. I don't know if you actually realize this, but that is what you are proposing, because you are suggesting a country run by contract.
Yes, but still with the concept of a centralized government. Because
this is the thing. It's you're basically saying a huge.
By your government.
Think Verizon and all of its service packages and all that kind of stuff, but done for adjudication, policing, and everything else. And you have that as one entity that provides everything. And if it's voluntary and they agree to it and they have a contract that holds the government responsible for what it does to their customers, then yeah, I'm all for it. As long as competition is allowed. If there's no competition allowed, if you can't have private security forces providing protection for people who don't sign that contract and adjudication systems for people who don't sign that contract, and so on and so forth. If you're saying that, you actually are arguing for anarcho-capitalism. Thank you. You are arguing for our side now. That is why.
I also would like to have the state, existing. So I'm trying.
But you can have that.
You can have your state. But if you're the only one funding it, then that's going to be on you, mate. You're going to have to spend a lot of money.
Well, I wouldn't be the only one funding it.
Well, okay, fair enough. But this is the point. You'd be the Pareto monopoly. And it would work up until it starts failing against its competition. And then people will start going, well, I want to opt out of this, but not that.
Well, then the government has to change in order to maintain the majority of the people. It has to.
Well, if it does, this is the point. Government doesn't change quickly. I think anybody, if we had anybody still from the military here, please back me up on this. Government never changes things fast because it took 50 years. Hurry up and wait is basically the mantra of the military. It really is.
What's that one new meme? Adapt. Yeah, so the government, that's the thing. That's how it is now because the government has this quote monopoly end quote. But if we made it so that if we made it so it had to be, you had to volunteer into the state. The government now has full broad range what's the word? Competition. So the only way I can think of this is now the government is forced to improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Well,
yes, that is the point. Everything should adapt and evolve.
So why not just cut to the chase and have it be a market then? I mean, if what you want is improvisation, adaptation, and overcoming, why not
competition?
And competition. Why not just leave it up to the market? Why do you have to have your state, which will force its rules on everybody, regardless of competition?
Because
Mate, let him have his state if it's what he wants. Because he voluntarily wants it. He's already said this.
Because I still think that there needs to be some sort of social safety net.
Yeah, if he wants that safety net, he can have it, as long as he lets us have our anarchy. I'm happy with that. If he wants to be, I'm sorry, I'll still think you're a slave, but if you want to be in your gilded cage and you choose that contract, Your power be it. If you find that it does cost you more than your neighbor,
I mean, if
you
you've
might
gotta,
change your mind.
let me just say, if you've got to buy security from any external force, you're a slave to that security system.
Potentially, but if the contract basically takes away your rights.
Yeah,
if they don't take away your rights, then you're not a slave.
Inherently, all contracts like that will have to take away your rights, because they have to take away your right to they have to take away your right to incur a crime against their other
why?
NAP doesn't have any laws, dude.
That's a conflict of interest argument.
And I'm a private investigator. When someone hires me and signs a contract to hire me, they're not my slave. They're my customer. I have an agreed service that I'm
providing. If anything, you're their slave for a bit.
Right. And really, let's get back to the definition of government. To me, the definition of government is a group that has a monopoly and that's protected by double standards and special protections. That wouldn't exist in a free market system. So you could have the services that you're talking about. The key, though, is that they would not have double protection or double standards and special protection under the law. They would be like my PI firm. I am not unequal to everybody else. I have to still be honest with them. I can't rip people off. I can't murder people. It's all the stuff. I can't rape people. It's all the stuff that the current state right now can get away with. And their punishment, a police officer's punishment for those types of crimes, is going to be way less than for me as a person that's not a police officer. That's the kind of stuff I'm saying that needs to change. And that's the difference between governance and government. Government implies those double standards and special protections. You can have everything that you're asking for without those double standards and special protections, and that's all we're asking for. That's it.
Yeah, but I wouldn't go so far as to say that I'm an anarcho-capitalist, because I disagree with the anarcho in anarcho-capitalist.
Okay, let's go with voluntarist then. You're happy to let us have our little slice of responsibility, provided you don't have to take it.
And voluntarism is the better stance than anarcho-capitalism. They're pretty much interchangeable, voluntarist and the anarcho-capitalist.
Yes, they are. Because all anarcho-capitalists are voluntarists, but not all voluntarists are anarcho-capitalists. But we can at least agree that you are that, because you want a voluntary government. And more power to you if you can make that work.
Yeah, for the same it's for the same reason that I changed my stance a long time ago on say abortions, right? I think that people should be allowed to have abortions if they want them, but I don't think that should be something that the government funds. That shouldn't be. You shouldn't be able to I'm split.
Shouldn't
because
enforce it nor be against it.
I
have a logical conclusion to that too as well. And look up evictionism. And speaking of Jeremiah, we gotta get on this Jeremiah too at some point. Gotta figure out how.
But what I'm trying to say is I'm okay with abortions. If I'm paying into the government, I don't mind funding somebody's abortion. That's gross. I mean, whatever, dude. That's whatever. It's almost.
I kind of have a problem with it, if I'm honest. It's not the whole "my body, my choice" thing. I'm not going to make any kind of thing on a rights argument. The issue is there is a life involved, no matter how you look at it.
Well, I'm all for snuffing out undeveloped life.
Well, but the baby would never
you see, it's one of those things where.
Let me just rein this in a little, because Idiot's Query is going to be on a stream, and I'm going to get people who want to talk about this on a debate level, on a structured debate level. It's going to be probably around a 4-hour debate, and people can pop in and out as they choose. But essentially, I'm going to try and get people to be as structured as possible, and try to get them to look at this on a very specific and academic level, the abortion issue. So let's save it for that. If any of you are interested in being a part of that debate, then feel free to contact me, and I'll and I'll put you on a side. But let me just get.
I might pop in a couple of minutes, but
we can talk about abortion for a whole night.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Trust me.
But
Let me just hold on. Let me just let Truth Force introduce himself because he popped in pretty late.
Okay, come in, Truth Force. Do you read us? Copy.
Yeah. Hey guys, how you doing? So yeah, so you said the topic of this. I know you guys probably are talking about some other stuff right now. I missed the first few hours. So we were talking about the military-industrial complex. I think Insanity History. You said.
Yes. Let's get back on topic.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say afterward. But introduce yourself, and then I'll give the next part of this topic.
Okay. Yeah.
So we got off topic, man.
Yeah. I'm Truth Force over on Steemit. I was in here last time. A few you might know me. For the ones that don't, I'm just the co-leader of the information war that we're running over on there, just trying to keep the MSM and the propaganda in check and make sure the truth is out there. But yeah, the military-industrial complex is something really interesting that I wanted to briefly just touch on here. A lot of people don't know too much about what happens when you continually increase the military budget, and what we're starting to see is you have perpetual wars that never end. You have
and that was the topic I was going to bring up. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I will say this because we've got like a short period of time coming up. What I'll say is this: like my question was, has the military-industrial complex gotten to the point where it's doing nothing but policing the world to create policing problems?
I would say that they are in some regions of the world, and at least for the USA, but then in other regions of the world that they aren't. Like I don't think we're really doing almost anything in South America, at least that I've heard of, unless that's such a big secret that I've never heard of it. But I know, like in other countries in the Middle East, we certainly are.
Well, clearly we're responsible for Venezuela, so yeah, you could say.
I mean, to what degree we're responsible for Venezuela, I couldn't really comment because I've talked to some of the people who are down there, and they say that the U.S. really hasn't done anything to them.
I'm making a joke on behalf of all socialists who will say so the only reason Venezuela failed is because of the evil capitalist America.
You need to add sarcasm to your voice when you do the delivery, mate, because even I thought you were briefly agreeing with them.
Yeah. That's the whole point. I did it intentionally.
That's an artist for you.
Oh, that's a good test for sure.
I know.
It's a good test.
I know when to revoke my my sarcasm simply for the sake of acting.
So, what's Truth Force's opinion on the military-industrial complex?
But yeah, essentially what we're seeing now that we have cameras everywhere and people are able to upload this to the internet, like on places that, like, I don't know if you guys ever look at Live Leak, where they show a lot of stuff happening that gets leaked from like the U.S. government, and like WikiLeaks will put stuff out. But, you know, there's like videos showing like drone strikes just, you know, annihilating civilians all the time. And the stats on it are something like, it's almost like for every terrorist you kill like 9 or 10 civilians or some crazy statistic like that. I don't know how accurate that is. That's just what I've studied up on. But just the fact that we're constantly killing civilians with what we're doing, and we're not really in a war with any country that's going to take us over, is essentially, to me, it just speaks of corruption and backroom deals where somebody's making a lot of money, whoever's running these companies, like maybe Blackwater and other things like that. And we know the politicians get paid off, so there's probably a lot of them that get paid off in that regard. And I've kind of always been of the opinion that the reason that we have all these wars is that there's a few reasons. One of them is we always want to have troops that are trained, and we're willing to do that at any cost, even if it means killing civilians, because that's just how the mentality of the people who control that kind of work. The second one is a lot of them are getting bribes and kickbacks and payoffs. And the third one is we have a lot of strategic military bases around the world to essentially control the world. And we have missile batteries everywhere that can shoot down nuclear missiles. And there's probably a lot of secret programs we still don't know about. I know a lot of stuff's beginning to develop with lasers. And it would make sense for us to have strategic military bases everywhere. but just the fact that we're constantly starting new wars, attacking Syria all the time when they pose no direct threat to us in any way, shape, or form. I'm kind of the mind that we just need to stop doing a lot of these things, but I don't see how there's a mechanism for getting out of that specifically. There's too much money, so I just don't see how it stops.
Allow me to be flippant for the sake of a joke, guys. Well, them's the breaks. Some people die, some people live. We all die eventually.
Everything Dies is a brilliant song by Typo Negative.
Yeah, and that summarizes the main problem that we have today, is that people don't care because it's not their family being killed or their town being bombed.
Oh, I don't even care if my family get killed, to be honest. I don't know how I feel about other people getting killed. I understand that it's an atrocity, but like my grandpa died, and I didn't care. I went,
That's a whole different thing though. Like, I get what you're saying here. You're saying that death is not inherently bad, and I agree with you in that. Death is not inherently bad, and there are casualties of war. I'm not saying it's a good thing,
I
but I'm not
fucking
saying
hated
it's a
the
bad thing
fucker
either. Oh, okay. Well, then, see, yeah, you didn't care because you hated the fucker. But here's where I'm coming from with it.
But
death is not inherently good nor inherently bad.
But I hated him. It's kind of like one of those two sides of the coin thing, and it's just kind of like, if I don't care if my grandfather dies, why would I care? I didn't care when David Bowie died. Nah, David Bowie's pretty cool. I didn't care when Michael Jackson died, but then again, he was a child rapist.
There's no emotional connection, dude. You have to have emotional connection for sure, which is part of why it's going to happen. Like, and part of it goes down to empathy, right? Can you have empathy for people across? And them dying does kind of affect you because you're actually paying for it at the same time, right? So because you're paying for this atrocities to happen, you don't necessarily agree that it's happening, but you're like, fuck it, whatever. But at the same time, it's like, oh, well, then you have no empathy for them, which isn't necessarily bad either. Like I said, death is not inherently bad, nor is it inherently good. It's part of life. It happens.
Right.
But the thing is, if you're attacking a certain group,
I'm listening, but I'm gonna walk away from the mic.
You need to do it with precision, and with that precision, you have to make sure that you don't have any casualties of war. You want to minimize that as much as possible, which is why drone strikes, they're pretty accurate, but not completely accurate. They do fuck up a lot, and they cause massive explosions, and you can't always account for debris and things like that, and where people are going to go once they see it, and things like that. Human interaction with it is a huge factor for sure. And my whole thing about the about casualties of war is that no matter what war you're fighting, whether it be self-defense, let's take it to Afghanistan, right? Let's say if I have a beef with somebody because they stole my shit, and I'm starting to retaliate, and I have to use deadly force because I have no other option, right? It can get there without them aggressing on me, and technically them trying to steal my car is them aggressing. And so with that, there will be casualties too of our shootout, right? We don't necessarily condone that, but at the same time, it's going to have to be understood that, hey, this does happen. I will have to pay for those at the same time. The thing that's not happening right now is that the government is not paying for the casualties that are taking out. Where I would have, if that shootout I had in Afghanistan ended up in another casualties death, I would have to pay for that. Yeah, I didn't necessarily do that on purpose, and I know that they didn't do it on purpose. They were trying to get me, but they got other people. I would still have to pay that because I'm the victor. Or I would have to make sure that they or the family or whatever was in control of them, make sure that they pay for it somehow. Liquidate whatever they have. I either have to do X amount of things for the people that were harmed, their families, or whatever, okay? So, that's the difference here. The government is not...
Depends on circumstance, obviously, mate.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so but just real quick, I have an interesting question that I'd like to see how you guys respond to this. So, what if for when you had to do your yearly taxes, they had everything itemized and you could see exactly where your tax dollars go? And let's say one of the items in the war section for army operations or whatever said drone strikes, and you had to pay like $1.
We keep on losing your truth for us. I'm not sure what that is, but
oh really?
I'm not. I'm hearing him fine at the moment.
Yeah, Jeremy, I can hear it.
So what if it said on your taxes that like $1 is, and then that $1 would go to killing like a tenth of a person because every $10 equals one dead person or something? How would you feel about it then?
I'm effectively a pacifist myself, so I would obviously say $1 is $1 too many. It's not something, if it's not being used to defend my life directly, why the fuck am I paying for this?
Yeah, precisely.
And I'm sorry, but anybody who makes the argument, terrorism, I'm sorry, but the war on terror cannot be won because abstract nouns don't fucking surrender.
Well, you
cannot kill something with no head.
Yeah, it brings me back to the movie Rest Repo. Like, have you guys seen that movie? Rest Repo. You can get it on Netflix. It's about army operations in Afghanistan, and basically in that movie, an asshole major that's running a military unit orders a rocket attack against a community, like a village in the middle of Afghanistan. And that rocket attack only kills women and children because, of course, the men are, they're out operating, they're defending their country. And when they kill those women and children, that military unit comes in, and on their retreat, their withdrawal, they're ambushed. And when they're ambushed, some people's throats are slit, and they're shocked by the so-called violence of the attack. And if you attacked my town and you blew my children to pieces, I'm going to slit your fucking throat too.
On your ass.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but slitting somebody's throat, to be honest, in that sort of situation, if you've just murdered my entire family, I'm not gonna. That is not something that I would be doing. I'd be doing much, much worse for retaliation.
Like chopping off their balls and shoving it down their throat. Yeah, retaliation.
Cheese grater, mate. Cheese graters would be involved. I am not a nice man when you fuck with me. But this is the point. If you don't fuck with me, I'm a very, very nice man. Yeah, this is Jordan Peterson again made a brilliant. There's a brilliant meme doing the rounds at the moment of a harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a dangerous man who voluntarily controls it.
Exactly.
And that's me.
That's anybody who's a voluntarist is somebody who voluntarily controls their rage unless they are aggressed against. When people I find for me, crazy works better than strong, just in general, because big people who've tried to accost me and take things from me, all you have to do is act like a complete mentalist, and they will back off because they don't know what's coming. They don't know how to handle whatever you're going to throw at them because they don't know what you're going to attack with. They don't have a stance to deal with. They don't have anything. And anything can be a weapon.
In that movie, though, they acted shocked that was happening. And the movie, of course, is propaganda, but obviously they don't understand what exactly happened. And obviously, if you kill people, innocent people like that, you should expect a very violent response. And again, like we've been saying, like if you did that to my family, I'm going to fucking kill you. I'm going to do everything I can to kill you and all of your friends. And that should not be a surprise to you. And that's one of the problems we have as a society is people watch that movie and they think, oh, that was horrible. Like those guys were being attacked and killed. It's like, no, they just fucking murdered a bunch of innocent people and they're paying the price. Every action
that's why I like John Wick
has
so
a
much,
consequences.
Yeah, it's John Wick.
My fucking puppy, I'm gonna go John Wick on your ass.
You want to know how I feel about most of this? You want to know how I see? If I were in charge, I know that the government couldn't do it because the government has to deal with sanctions and whatnot. But this
rules for rulers, mate.
Part of why I am slightly in favor of I'm in favor of the voluntism and the private militaries is because I would want for there to be a private company who is willing to take decisive action to end conflict quickly. Because I've thought about this long enough to meme about it and then finally to adopt it as a position. Honestly, I'm not opposed to the idea of if you are facing Islamic aggressors to bomb the Kaaba. nuke their fucking holy relic out of existence and show them that God is not on their side. You see, and I would be entirely unopposed to the idea of nuking the Kaaba and closing the borders.
And that is this stream demonetized.
That's all right. My stream long ago, but
my streams are probably always going to be demonetized, but I don't have monetization enabled yet anyway.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
But I don't have 1,000 subs yet, so they don't allow monetization at my level anymore.
Now, question is, does anyone here disagree with that idea? Nuke the fucking Kaaba.
Yes. Yes,
okay.
Nukes are irresponsible and fucking bullheaded.
Okay. Maybe not nuke, but tactical the Kaaba. Okay.
If civilians die,
with precision, talking about precision, right?
If civilians die, no.
It doesn't matter how tactical you are about it. Somebody is going to die, and
if civilians die, no.
Well, that's
the problem. The problem is made.
That's not voluntarism, though. If you're just nuking people, because then
correct,
completely goes against that, though, doesn't it?
Not necessarily.
Maybe part of his contract.
Yeah, but that's
okay.
Last repro where they rocket attacked the village because they're like, oh fuck it, they're all terrorists. No, you can't do that.
You launch a nuke, they drop dirty bombs in all your cities. This is the point. Where do you fucking end the war?
I listen, right? Because I am inherently a pacifist. My nuke the Kaaba idea might not lend to that. I don't agree.
Slight contradiction.
I don't agree. Yeah. Like here's the. I don't agree with the deaths of innocents, but I understand that if you're going, if somebody is waging, an ideology like Islam is going to wage war against you, and they're going
to have casualties. I guess
maybe. This is
some
the
of
point.
them. Some of the adherents, not all of them. I know plenty of Muslims.
Not all Muslims.
I know plenty.
Stop.
I know plenty of Muslims who don't. You stop.
No, I know exactly what you're saying, and I understand. The thing is, the Islamic extremists, or the ones that are the ones that we're fighting against, aren't against using their less extreme brothers as meat shields.
Yeah, so are plenty of Americans. Reasonably speaking, you're not discussing anything on an individual level, and you're going to end up falling in these socialist collectivist traps because it's a trash ideology you're talking about. You're talking about supporting one trash ideology that uses everybody as human shields over one trash ideology which some of whose adherents try to separate themselves from the pack. I mean, statism is never going to be an ideology that respects the individual, and statism always uses all of their tax cattle as fucking human shields against everything. They've got an investment hedging potentials against all of the fucking possible things that could happen to them because they've already promised your babies as fucking slaves. So you can't tell me that nuking the Kaaba would remove these sorts of toxic ideology. They wouldn't. They would just change.
They just eliminate one.
Yeah, and it would strengthen the other. So congratulations, you've got power where you like it better. You're no better than them.
Yeah, the Christian zealots are the reason why things like the movie Restrepo are justified. They're like, oh, they're just terrorists. Fuck them.
Yeah, this is the point. Again, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. It's all about perception. And the problem is that when you bomb some country, you're gonna cause casualties. That's gonna piss off a bunch of families. Those families will then be leaning towards those indoctrinations. And yeah, their holy relic's been destroyed, but now they just have a galvanized target. Now everybody who is a moderate hates you. You are just basically creating enemies galore by doing that kind of solution. And nobody takes those sorts of things into account. They don't take into account the risk. They just take into account an objective. We're programmed to, though. This is something that our brains are programmed to do.
Listen, when it comes to dealing with Islam, and I'm fully supportive of Muslims who've come to the Western world and who have westernized and whatnot, but When it comes to the Muslim world, when it comes to the Middle East, I have a very strict brim and firestone position because I've listened to all of the ex-Muslims who left there, who fled there. I've listened to the lectures that Muslims have done. I've read through the passages that I've listened to them read their passages in sermons and whatnot.
Let me ask you a question. Okay.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the Soviet-Afghan conflict?
Yes.
All right. So are you familiar with what the CFR encouraged there?
Mind you, I'm only familiar with it because of Metal Gear Solid 5. So I don't
okay, well, if you want to get people westernized, then maybe stop the kinds of institutions you're suggesting empowering with bombs to bomb the Kaaba. Hold on. Maybe stop empowering these organizations and start understanding that they've been funding the most extreme people over there and killing the people off that would be moderates. Maybe understand that the reason the ideology is so extreme now is because of the way that the West has treated them before. Reasonably speaking, extremism has been on the rise for the past century. There's a reason for that, and the reason is collateral fucking damage and blowback, and the funding that goes to extremists so that they can take down whatever dictator wants to get off the dollar. So realistically, yeah.
Sorry, mate. It is a painful truth, and it's the only thing that I've ever heard that Jeremy Corbyn over here has actually gotten right. Collateral damage creates terrorism. This is not something that is really questionable, no matter how much the government wants people to think it's not true. It is logical.
You could just look at like gang.
I think it's something else, but I'm not going to mention what it is.
Yeah, it sounds like something's beating it a little bit there. But I was going to say, you could look at like the gang wars with the Bloods versus the Crips. Do you think that that's ever going to end? There's too many people that have died on both sides in their
still going
of just killing each other. So
I thought one of
Crips probably never.
I thought one of those gangs got taken down completely, so I wasn't sure if it was even still going.
Bloods and Crips still go. I think, was it Snoop who asked the Crips to take on the Kanye? I can't remember.
Yeah,
something like that. One or the other.
Like Los Angeles. I mean, they're all over.
They're all over the fucking place. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that they're actually.
I mean, they've not really penetrated Britain that much because I mean they have to deal with the Yardies and the East End crews and the Russian mob and the rest of it. So I mean, there is an undercurrent, but it doesn't really affect many people over here.
Yeah, I just know that my relatives, my human relatives, can't drive to the city while wearing red or blue.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that's ridiculous. And this is the thing, that exists in a world with a state.
Right.
So having a state won't stop that.
Yeah.
Having private competition would stop that potentially and also not having fucking drug laws. Because they have just basically made gangs a entire profit motive that is incredibly easy to sell and incredibly illegal. And because of that illegality, it jacks up the price and basically means they can't be valid businessmen. They have to be violent gangsters to maintain their property.
Yeah,
against both Prohibition always does. Prohibition did this with Capone. I mean, this is how Capone became powerful. If it wasn't for bootlegging during the alcohol prohibition era, the dry spell that America tried to enjoy, Capone would never have been as powerful as he was because he wouldn't have made any money. He was just a low-bit thug up until that point. He just saw the potential for bootlegging and made an empire. And if it weren't for Prohibition, none of that could have been possible. As soon as they ended Prohibition, those mobs and stuff had to diversify into other slightly illegal things like gambling or drugs or any other thing that they could get their hands on. But it really hurt them when Prohibition went away because everybody could sell booze again. So prohibitions always fail because of this. It takes time and it takes the popularity of whatever they're doing to make it happen.
Yeah, you can't force someone to not want something or to not have it. That's not good because like they own it and they want it, they're going to get it. You know?
Exactly.
They're going to obtain it.
You tell a teenager as well, you can't have something. What is he going to do?
What do you think Vox did with the fucking "This Is America" telling people not to meme it? They pretty much said, "Hey, internet, meme this." It's the same thing that happens worldwide on a global scale. Like, not as funny, but it goes all the way up, dude. So you can't tell people not and then expect them to not want to. I'm like, why not? They're curious. Curiosity kills the cat, which is why you can't tell people not to do something. You can explain it's not the best of your interest to do this, and here's why. Don't straight up do not do it. Because then they're going to want to do it more. Explain to them why first.
This is why
it's like what you're telling a kid to, like, hey, you know, probably don't touch that. They're going to want to experience to touch that. Like, you know, if you touch that, it's probably going to hurt you a lot. But by all means, if you want to, figure it out. But that's how you go about it, you know.
And of course, like, there's also the risk potential because everybody analyzes risk to some extent, and part of the thing is that if you see somebody like they smoke a crack pipe and then they spontaneously explode, you're probably not going to smoke crack. But if you see people enjoying themselves, like doing a drug for a really, really long time, and they don't have any seeming adverse consequences other than things that you might think you could manage or might, you know, make the executive decision that you don't really care that much about, then you're going to be more interested in the thing that's being prohibited than the thing that's not, because you're like, well, what's the big deal here?
Well, and the thing is, even if somebody did just smoke a crack pipe and spontaneously combusted, that kind of event is so absurd that at that point your brain could just reason or could just say, oh, that won't happen to me.
No, I think if they see that happen and then that result, most people would go crack pipe plus mouth equals head explosion. Head explosion equals death. Let's try to survive. Evolution has designed us to not want to die in a very painful and instantaneous way.
Well, let's. I mean, you know, mounting against that, maybe the first person might say, "Oh, that won't happen to me," and then they'll explode, and the third person will say, "I'm not so sure about this." Everyone after him is definitely just kind of like, "Yeah, no, I'm good."
They're gonna weigh the chances.
I think 3 out of 300. Yeah, I think if you can determine repeatability,
2 out of 2.
As soon as you determine repeatability of 100%, I think most people go, nope, not for me.
2 out of 2
and then
is within
one more person.
Yeah, 2 out of 2 is within plausible fluke range, but 3 out of 3, that's no, maybe not.
Yeah, I think that would just establish risk is involved in taking this substance.
Yes,
and this is the point. Most people, with the power of the internet as it stands today, and I have to make that qualification. I'll explain in a minute. Most people can basically look up whatever the fuck they want about whatever fucking subject they want, and basically get the information that they need and validate it against how many times it's been cited or how many times it as a scholastic article has been applied to a real world situation.
So just on a slightly unrelated thing, I vote that the entirety of the world should start making fertilizer that has a chemical compound in it that, when combined with the other parts that make methamphetamines, turns into an explosive.
So you don't believe in people taking Ritalin, Adderall, or any of those other meth forms?
There's a difference between yellow meth and amphetamines. Amphetamines are not methamphetamines necessarily.
I don't care what
Ritalin is a methamphetamine, technically.
Don't hurt other people to obtain your drug, and I don't give a fuck what you do, man. Honestly, like, do your drugs, just don't hurt other people to obtain them or while you're on them. And I don't care.
I've seen
that's what it comes down to.
I've seen what methamphetamine does to people, and I can't agree.
I mean, it does it to,
that's
that's
a
their
choice. If they want to do it, let them
choice.
do it.
I'd argue that if you're arguing addiction and the rest of it, there's a much deeper problem when it comes to addiction. It's
convince them to, but
the problem that ends up arising is that the individual that starts taking drugs like that can and may very well will become a danger to themselves or to the society around them and others.
And if that happens to them, then the consequences they have taken are unfortunate, but ultimately theirs. It is their choice.
But I
educate them on the drug. Educate them on the drug. Like at these point in times, like if you're not going to tell someone what a drug is and it's going to be available, like let's go back to NCAPs.
Well, let me be very specific here, though. I mean, because I just want to get this out there. By that same token, nobody who regularly eats burgers should drive. Because what we're talking about is like a danger to themselves or others. Okay, you could have a heart attack or a stroke behind the wheel from the amount of sodium and cholesterol that's in a burger.
Stress.
So if you regularly eat burgers, you shouldn't be able to drive by that same token.
That's not really comparable.
Yes, it is.
It kind of is.
Not really.
You're endangering yourself and others if you're behind the wheel of a car, and if you have a heart attack, you will cause an accident.
Because somebody can frequently eat burgers but still be completely healthy.
And somebody can frequently do meth and still be healthy. There's Al Jorgensen.
Same with heroin. Yep, same with heroin.
Yeah.
It just depends. It really does depend on the person and on the condition and on a lot of different factors. But the problem of addiction is most people don't actually know what it is.
Okay,
I mean, there is good research. There's good research on what it is.
All right,
but most people don't know it.
I want some numbers then, Jeremy. I want numbers. How many people get heart attacks and have crashes that kill people versus how many people take drugs and die and kill people under the influence of mind-altering substances? I want numbers. If the risk of a heart attack while driving is higher than the risk of you killing somebody while under the influence, I will agree with you. Otherwise,
nope. You have to keep in mind that those are illegal, and to obtain illegal substances, you will end up causing extreme violence. You have to take that into effect. Otherwise, it's not going to count.
Hold on.
Yeah, I mean, you are kind of applying a bit of a double standard on that.
Well, most car accidents are caused by road rage and just absolute, basically people screwing up and making a mistake, watching their cell phone or something like that. The majority of the car accidents are not from drug use. Sorry. That's clear and obvious. And
that's fine. I just want numbers. I want numbers. I want comparative numbers between the two things that were being compared here.
I'm not certain you'll be able to get death stats for heart attacks that caused fatal accidents easily. But let's pull this argument a little bit back, I think, because
you could just look at
it's not MIC. And yeah, if you look at alcohol as a drug, that alone is probably, I mean, that is significant. That is statistically significant factor for death.
Well, and the fact is that people who make these prohibition laws over drugs, they're not concerned with actual numbers. They're not concerned with deaths. They're not concerned with
not at all.
No. If they gave a damn,
because if they were, then they would schedule ethanol the same place as meth instead of marijuana.
Yeah, and in addition to that,
you realize it's stopping you from getting it hurts.
Yeah, and in addition to that, we've spent $1 trillion to affect absolutely zero change on actual drug addiction rates. The thing that the drug war, another abstract noun war, by the way, the thing that the drug war actually was attempting to achieve was a reduction in addiction and in usage. And it has not achieved a reduction in usage. It has been effective. Yeah, if anything, there's a slight uptick. Most people just say that it is negligible. It's within the bounds of error. And it basically has created a null effect. So it is a pure cost for zero gain, zero objective gain.
That gets us back to the
gain for cartels and everything
complex. If you think about it, because you have the prison system complex that continuously they get a certain amount of money for how many inmates they have, and that takes us back to the military industrial complex.
Yes, it does. Oh my God, that's beautiful.
With the endless, all of those. I thought that you'd like that. We're actually talking about the exact same thing in a different way.
Yeah, it is the same fucking concept because the MIC gets its ammo and most of its kit made by prisoners. The cheap shit is made by prisoners effectively. They just outsource it to them.
We also have to look at the effects of what's happening with the war on terror. We're taking in prisoners of war, essentially. Every time we fucking arrest somebody who's like smuggling something in, we're effectively taking prisoners of war. And so we have prisoners filling up like inside our prisons. We have illegals in our prisons. It's like, what the fuck?
You speak really fast. Slow down.
Sorry, I get excited. This is my shit, homie. Like this and get me on fucking intelligence agencies law on fucking in contracts. Oh, dude, I will fucking jerk off all over your face.
Jesus Christ. No, the way you talk reminds me of Destiny. Oh God! You're all aware of how badly he just gish galloped the fuck over JonTron. That was man, slow down. Let us savor and digest the things that you're saying.
Even the driving while so-called intoxicated thing is a complete joke. It's a control mechanism because the majority of the people that are so-called intoxicated when they're driving are completely safe and they don't do any harm at all to anybody. My dad,
a lot of functioning alcoholics are out there.
It's a punitive measure.
My dad would drive while he was drinking beer.
Okay. All right, I've got some numbers. Illegal drugs, according to livescience.com, illegal drugs cause 250,000 global deaths yearly. Whereas, like, competitively speaking, there are about that many from a combination through the, what is this place? NHTCA.gov, NHTCA, through the Department of Transportation, it looks like, crash stats. We've got around like what is it saying here? Like 30,000 from seizure, blackout, diabetic reaction, heart attack, stroke, and others. So, and this is just in the U.S. So, I would say that the global stats compared to that mean that they're pretty much equivalent problems.
Yeah, and being distracted and rage driving is the worst.
The big problem I see there is that they didn't like that's not just on the cholesterol from the problem
right people. But if you're making your problems
too.
Worse because the problems that cause these sorts of things are compounded typically, if you're making the problem worse, then you shouldn't be able to drive by your standards because you might be a danger to yourself or others.
I suppose
this is the point. You can't. It's the old "think of the children" argument. It's the same. It's the same damn thing. It's not basically really. You're trying. It really is because you're saying I want what's best for you. Therefore, I'm going to limit you.
Let me put it this way, my friend. Let me get right up close to the microphone and just tell you what I think. Man,
drugs have a clear and defined immediate effect on people who they affect. Eating hamburgers does not immediately get you high or make you act irrational. It
really fills my belly, bitch.
It'll fill your fucking belly, but it won't.
I mean, if we're talking about blockages in blood vessels, those are always the result of buildup, and a chunk of that loosens off and gets jammed in an artery or something. So it would have an immediate effect after that sort of thing is consumed because it would be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And if you're going to go that route, then realistically, all the people who don't injure somebody while under the influence of some of these illicit drugs, all those people have to be taken into account as well. You can't just have one and not the other.
But that's the thing. Again, it takes months, years of buildup of cholesterol in veins to finally hit that blockage point.
And once you're obese, all
it takes is one fucking hit of the devil's lettuce. I mean, of methamphetamines, and to fuck you up.
I mean,
then you
no,
go and crash
Or a
into
bacon
somebody's
cheeseburger.
car.
it doesn't. I mean, if you're talking specifically, there are plenty of it people who do it who just sit on their couch.
Yeah, see, the problem with the meth is bad for you, therefore you shouldn't take it argument as being a reason to regulate or to reason to prevent it from ever being sold by force is you
takes away personal freedom.
Yeah, well, A, it takes away personal freedom, and
listen,
B, more importantly, is it doesn't deal with the underlying problem. The underlying problem is not the drug. The underlying problem is the desire to take the drug. And the desire to take the drug is much more complicated.
I think we might be arguing from a point from a perspective or a point where you guys might think that I'm not for the legalization of currently illegal drugs, and so therefore I would think
no, not at all.
No, it's not what we're trying to argue. I think what we're trying to argue, well, what I'm trying to argue at least, is not that you are against the legalization of drugs. What we're trying to say is that the mandatory use of, or the mandating of this drug is not to be sold, has to require force.
Again, well, that's okay.
And you did mention that with meth, and that's why I think we're being so vehement here.
Right. Well, let me put it this way, right? I mean, meth is, I can understand the government reasoning behind making certain drugs illegal, which is my point. That's basically the only point I had, is that I can understand it. It makes sense.
But the problem, okay, I get that, but the problem is the reasoning isn't appealed.
Huh?
There's a difference. You can understand it, but do you condone it? That's the big thing here. Like, I understand it too, but I do not condone it, and I do not think it's a good idea. I understand it now. You understand
I
it too.
say it's illogical, personally, but go on.
It.
Let me, because I take a lot of these things at various different levels. I understand it, and within our current societal context, I condone it to an extent. Because we don't have an effective way of, because making it broadly illegal and then arresting people for possessing it and actively attempting to find the people and try and arrest them makes sense to an extent that we want to make preventative measures so that people don't end up taking the drug and then getting behind a wheel or going out doing something that could end up killing somebody.
So you want to take preventative measures. Preventative measures is what you're aiming for, right?
And I can understand this from the point of view that the government, while it is self-interested to an extent, it does have to protect its assets, and every civilian is an asset, because every civilian that is under their care is a boon to the government. So they want to protect all of us by preventing.
Where do you draw the line, though?
So
where do you draw the line?
Measures, right? There's way better ways to go about preventative measures. There's way better ways of going about preventative measures than it is to enforce your company or your assets to not do something. You don't have to necessarily enforce something they cannot have.
It's worse.
You can go about it a different way. Okay.
It's worse than that, though. Whatever I put in my body is my fucking personal choice. You have no control and should not have any control over anything I put in my body, whether it be marijuana, meth, or fucking bleach. I don't care if I'm poisoning myself to death. You have no control.
The only thing you can do is
you not have control over me. As long as I don't commit a crime because of what I put in my body, and then if I do commit a crime because of something I put in my body, charge me for that crime.
But you see,
no victim, no crime.
Under the current
preventative measures, what I'm talking about.
What I'm trying to get at here, though, is under the current system, under our current state, the government is responsible for you. And if something bad happens to you, the government is responsible because you're paying them taxes to protect you, even from yourself.
We get that argument. We get that argument, but we disagree with it completely, because the government shouldn't be responsible for you, and you shouldn't be responsible for it.
Here's the thing, too. If you want preventative measures, if you want the government to capture you, there's different ways
I would take issue with the responsible for you part, because the government in many states, the police have no right to defend your life if you're under attack from somebody. They don't have to jump into a bullet to save you. So
Dude, that's federal law now. The Supreme Court ruled on that one. They said there is no right to, there is no obligation to protect and serve. It's just an
Well,
oath.
that's what they have to do. That's what we're supposedly hiring.
That's what we're
them for.
paying them to do. It's not what they're
yeah,
actually supposed to do.
All
what they're
right,
supposed to do is enforce law.
So what I'm gonna say here is that we're at about the 3-hour mark now, and I want to make this an entirely new conversation, maybe in 2 weeks, because next week is going to be the intelligence industrial complex. It's going to be discussing. It's going to be discussing how the intelligence agencies create a lot of the problems that they claim to be solving, and how they're a massive growth industry, because essentially the more there is to watch, the more watching they get to do, and the more people they get to hire to do it, etc. So that'll be the topic next week.
That's fun stuff.
I won't be a very interesting participant, if at all, because I basically agree with that. Yeah, that's.
Oh, that was my focus in the university.
Well, just look into a bunch of it before next week, and come with a bunch of stuff to talk about. That'd be fine.
Honestly, if you want a source, just go on WikiLeaks, look at Vault 7 and Vault 8.
Oh yeah,
honestly, they are.
I seed those vaults. Those are great.
Yeah, they are unbelievable pieces of information, and honestly, they are mind blowing in just how in depth this thing is. It honestly, and this is the CIA. This is from probably cobbled tech, so God knows what the NSA can do now.
So no, you have no idea what the CIA.
So I'll be talking about this.
Don't even touch it.
Right, and I hope that you'll bring as much as you can. Next week, I'll plan it so that if it needs to go over, it can. And I'll also be discussing in a couple weeks, since the subject seems to be rather contentious, completely like removing all drug restrictions, and versus keeping them the way they are, and anywhere in between. It'll be a nice continuum to discuss things on. And then in a couple of weeks, it'll be moving on to things like identity politics, because it's moving close. It'll be because we're moving close to the 4th of July, and I want to emphasize that politics is identity politics. So it should be rather interesting to discuss these sorts of things. But I want to devote those things to their own stream so that we can really dive in. And there will probably be a military industrial complex part 2 where I can get a bunch of vets involved. But I want to get as many people involved in these sorts of things that know about them as possible. So if any of you in the audience think you know quite a bit about these things, then hit me up and we can discuss getting you on here. I'm very open to getting as many different viewpoints as possible. If you're a communist, a socialist, a fascist, dirty capitalist, I don't care. I want to talk to every single person out there. And so, what?
Have you seen my beak? I'm a Jew.
Well, or you're a Muslim. So I mean, on those levels, join us next Sunday. There's going to be a small post show where we'll be able to shoot the shit about like what we're going to talk about on the next time we shoot the shit, because shooting the shit is an accuracy test. And I shall see y'all on Wednesday when we're going to be discussing the news that has happened between last Wednesday and this next Wednesday. So if any of y'all who are currently here are interested in coming on that, let me know, because we'll be getting topical as fuck. Anyway, be well, everyone, and we will see you next Sunday.
Take care, guys.
Thanks all.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Aloha.